Hello dear viewers, thank you for choosing the Manhwa compilation channel. Please leave feedback in the comments after watching. Enjoy watching. The main character's name is Vincent Evans, an ordinary guy with glasses with brown hair, a smoker. From the very beginning, he led an ordinary life until he got into a fight with a robber, trying to stand up for a girl. During the fight, he was stabbed in the leg, after which he became disabled. Friends who seemed like brothers to him turned out to be no more acquaintances who only used him, although he always helped them by lending money. Finding himself in such a difficult situation, Vincent lost all meaning in life. But he found an unusual phone. The game installed on it showed the characteristics of his body. With the help of this phone, he could improve and become stronger by changing his body parameters. The images that appeared in his head made it clear that his life would now change dramatically. Imagining a situation where he will have to use his abilities, Vincent understands that he is ready to take on any challenge that comes his way. While going down the stairs in his house, he heard a woman complaining that they were trying to deceive her, saying that delivery to the apartment was supposed to be free. Having finally gone all the way down to the floor, he saw a blonde arguing with the courier. She was unhappy that they did not want to deliver the parcel to her apartment. The packed refrigerator weighed 50 kilograms. She was unable to carry it. The two couriers had no choice but to agree with her. One of the couriers said that delivery was free only to home and no one asked to pay for it. Justified his idea by drawing the analogy that in a supermarket she would have to pay for a package. But they do physical labor, so she should treat them better. The girl only agreed irritably, agreeing that she had been deceived after all. Having refused payment, she decided that she herself would find someone who would help her. The courier just grinned and wished him luck. Vincent immediately approached, turning to a girl named Riley with an offer of help. Riley and the couriers just looked at the guy puzzled, not understanding how a cripple could deliver such a heavy package. Finding herself in an awkward situation, she raised her hand to her face and asked the guy why he was showing off. But Vincent continued to insist on his. The guy began to approach the packed refrigerator. Riley asked him about his seriousness, picking up the parcel. Vincent heard from the courier that he could break it, but calmly continued. The couriers mocked him, calling him a cripple, saying that no one would pick him up if he fell. But with one jerk upward, Vince confidently lifted the refrigerator. Throwing the parcel on his back, he told Riley that they could go to her apartment. The girl and the couriers could only look in shock at such a miracle. The couriers could not understand where the disabled man got so much strength, and how this was even possible. Meanwhile, Vincent and Riley were already climbing the steps. Having reached the blonde's apartment, Vincent easily placed the parcel on the floor. Riley thanked Vincent with a smile on her face. The girl made the remark that he would still have to pay rent for the apartment, but for the help provided he could detain her for a couple of days, which made the guy very happy. Inspecting the purchased refrigerator, she joyfully stated that for a discount it was very good, and offered Vincent the chicken left in her kitchen. Although Vincent thanked Riley for the offer, he refused, citing the fact that he already needed to escape. Riley just irritably shouted after him that he was an idiot. She couldn't understand why Vincent couldn't sit with her, and made the assumption that he didn't like her appearance. The guy was already sitting in his room, carefully looking at his phone. There was only one thought spinning in his head. He was right. Using a real example, Vincent was able to fully verify that the gaming characteristics of the phone affect his real life, and now he can take up martial arts to improve them. In addition, he remembered a healing elixir in the game that can heal his leg. Realizing the full extent of his capabilities, he assumed that with the help of this game, he could get a cool car and a beautiful girl. Meanwhile, he has already hovered the cursor over the button for the amount of money transferred to the game. Having successfully made a donation, he received 2 in-game coins by investing 200 real money. Vincent, not believing his eyes, rubbed them. His eyes wide open, he peered at the screen. His surprise and irritation were so great that he threw up the phone. The exchange was completely unequal. Raising his hand to his face in disappointment, he thought about what he could buy with 2 coins. At this time, on the phone, a wealthy merchant in expensive clothes said that only the rich are allowed to enjoy his store. Vincent decided that he would return to him sometime later. Moving on to the next merchant, a poor peasant appeared in front of him. The peasant told the guy that this is a flea market. He buys one thing and gets the second as a gift, and can get a 90% discount for 24 hours. The peasant offered to look at his new goods collected from a landfill. Vincent was only surprised at such a big difference between the stores. In a poor peasant's store, Vincent saw a book for 1 coin. He was very interested in the price. The cheap book turned out to be a collection of sunflowers. Vincent sat in bewilderment, not knowing whether he should buy it. After thinking about it, the guy finally decided not to spend his last money on junk and began to scroll further. Next, he discovered the Tianjiao technique, which had properties to treat disabilities. The technique seemed less effective to Vincent than the black pearl ointment, but it should have been suitable for treating his leg. The Tianjiao technique had a discount mentioned by the peasant. Instead of 200 coins, it cost 20. The discount price was very favorable in comparison with the guy's financial situation. Taking everything into account, Vince realized that this technique was the only way to heal his disability and finally start a normal life. Considering his options, he needed to get a little less than 2,000 money in the remaining 24 hours of the discount. He had to act quickly. Realizing his situation and the fact that if he does not make it on time, he will have to pay 10 times more, he rushed to the exit door. Leaving the apartment, the main character rushed to look for any ways to achieve his goal. Sitting on the bus, he peered out the window, rethinking his life after suffering a leg injury. The inheritance that was inherited from the parents was completely spent on treatment of the leg in the hospital. Due to an injury, he left the school where he studied, which is why his social circle dropped to 0, which in his opinion equated his chances of borrowing money to 0. Walking up to the door of his old dorm and knocking, Vincent told himself that his position did not matter. The guy resolutely declared to himself that he would not beg from anyone for free. Then a blonde guy his age came out from around the corner. Seeing Vincent, he asked if it was him. Vincent was taken aback. A peer asked an old acquaintance in a derogatory tone how he got to his position, and what he forgot here. The blonde guy came to the door and called those who were in the room to look at who came to them, trying to shame him. One of those in the room was surprised by the appearance of Vincent, who was known for his strength at school. Other classmates also began to look into the corridor. Everyone began to pay attention to Vincent and asked him about his business and why he came to them, which made him very embarrassed. Vincent got straight to the point and talked about his need for money to treat his leg. He said that he had no one else to ask, except his former classmates. Hearing his request, they were embarrassedly surprised. One of his classmates said that he could give, but he spent his last money on a donation for the game. In addition, he referred to his sick mother, who did not send him money. The others agreed with him, trying to get away with it, using the same excuses. Vincent felt embarrassed by his situation and the way his former friends behaved towards him. Confused, he said that he thanked them anyway and asked them to forget about this incident. One of his classmates, putting his hand on Vince's shoulder, invited him to come to the party they were throwing in the evening. A peer noticed that the cripple's leg was very thin, thereby hinting that he should have a snack with them. Vincent rightly noted that if they don't have money, then where do they get the funds to hold a party? Clear from the rest of my classmates that their lives had completely failed. Vincent pulled his classmate's hand off his shoulder, again asking him to forget about everything. The blonde guy, feeling ashamed, tried to catch up with Vincent, saying that he could give him some money. A classmate referred to the fact that there are problems in his family, but he can give a small amount of the remaining cash he has. While a classmate was handing out money, his wallet fell out of his pocket. The classmate, realizing the whole situation, completely blushed. Vincent only looked at him with disappointment. The fallen wallet was full of money. Vincent thanked him, but refused the money, making it clear that he did not need handouts. A classmate tried to stop the guy, clumsily saying that the wallet was not his, but he continued to leave. Those standing around were surprised at such a large amount of money in the wallet. Snarling at them, the blonde man picked it up. Not understanding why Vincent was offended, the others began to accuse him of arrogance. They told the departing Vincent that no one would have believed that he would have returned the money to them if they had given it to him. Another classmate out of spite asked him if he thought he was still as cool as he was in school. One of them suggested that Vincent was causing financial problems for his parents. At the mention of his dead parents, everything began to boil inside Vincent. The blonde classmate agreed, saying that he was offering money and he refused. Continuing to insult the cripple, they called him the type of person who bites the hand that feeds him. The guy was filled with anger. Laughing, they decided that they should forget about Vincent, and it was more important to have fun at the party. Vincent decided not to get involved in the conflict and continued to leave. His classmates aloud listed what they would eat at the party, and that they would then go to karaoke, and as if nothing had happened, they continued to discuss donations to the game. As he left, Vincent began to remember how he helped them all, how he stood up for the blonde guy at school when he was being bullied, how he lent money to his classmates when they asked for it. The guy remembered that in the last month of school, he even had to ask his relatives for money in order to lend it to his classmates. Turning around, Vincent realized that their friendship was just a waste of time. Now he could only rely on himself. After some time, the guy was already standing in the liquor store. Turning to the cashier, he handed over the money. The cashier smilingly winked at the young guy and said that if someone asks him about beer, he didn't sell him anything. Having opened the bottle, he immediately began to drink from his throat. After taking a sip from the bottle, Vince noticed how nice it was to drink cold beer in such heat. Suddenly, someone snatched the bottle right from under his hands. The guy didn't even have time to react. The bottle immediately flew into the trash. The guy was angry at such impudence, not understanding who dared to take his drink away. Turning around, he saw a girl with pink hair. It was his old friend Fiona. The girl pointed irritably at Vincent.
She reproached him for leaving school without telling anyone. It seemed to her that he had changed. But when she saw him, she realized that she was mistaken.
Vincent made a remark that he was no longer a student, and she should not worry about him. Fiona noticed that the guy still had the same nasty character, but the guy retorted that hers was even worse. The embarrassed girl snapped, saying that it was none of his business, and in general, if he wants to drink, then let him do it at home. Exhaling deeply, Winston asked himself if he still had a house. Stretching, the guy began to leave. Not expecting such an outcome, the girl asked him to wait. Vincent turned around and asked him what happened. Without allowing him to answer, he immediately said that everything was fine with his leg, and he could live in peace. He called himself a drunk and a pathetic insect, but said that it was not so bad. After all, cockroaches can survive the apocalypse, and he is just as strong. The girl said irritably that he couldn't let her finish. She asked Vincent if she really annoyed him that much. The guy replied that meeting her reminds him of meeting his mother, and therefore he should pay tribute. After which he tried to leave, citing urgent matters, asking to contact him at another time. After asking him to contact his ass, Fiona said that she did not have his phone number and asked him, having added that if he gives her his number, then she can answer him with something good. Vince refused completely indifferently. The girl asked if he wanted to take a look before making a decision. Having told him not to regret the missed opportunity later, she began the report until 3. The trick worked. The guy returned complaining that she had been bullying him like this since school, and that this was the last time he fell for it. The girl smiled widely and showed him the package. Pointing to the package, she rhetorically asked what could be in it, hinting at money. Vincent looked at her joyfully. The girl again hinted at money by showing him the package. The guy immediately rushed at her, trying to take him, but the girl skillfully dodged. Satisfied, Fiona reminded him that she needed to give his phone number and residential address. The guy wrote everything on a piece of paper as quickly as possible and handed it to her. Looking at the piece of paper, the girl confirmed her assumptions that Vince doesn't even have a landline phone, and decided that she would help him since everything was so bad for him. But before giving the money, she asked Vincent to say that this time she wins and he recognizes and shows his respect for her. The guy in turn agreed that even though she is a beggar, she will never accept other people's gifts. The girl said that she is a good student, so he has a high scholarship that she doesn't even have time to spend. 1,000 in a package is a small amount, and if he doesn't want to take it, then she will give the money to the homeless. While Fiona was talking, Vincent deftly snatched the bag of money from her. Having done this, he hugged the girl so that she blushed with embarrassment and promised to return everything when he had the opportunity. Running away, he said goodbye, saying that in their competition, he was still the winner. The girl, still as embarrassed, looked after him. Immediately, she got very angry, telling the guy after her that she didn't let him go, but he had already left. Vincent walked down the street. Thinking about Fiona, he noticed that the girl, in principle, has no bad qualities. Having 1,000 money in his pocket, he only had to find 800 more. Then he came to the door of the restaurant. It was the Cinderella restaurant where he worked every night. Winston came here because he didn't need such a large amount of money, and he could earn it here. The manager in the suit looked at Vincent silently. The man asked if the guy came to work too early. The manager noticed that if he wants to start work earlier, this will not be taken into account in his salary. But the guy wanted to turn to him with a request. He asked the boss for an advance, citing problems with money. The manager responded positively since 2 cleaners quit today, and if Vince was ready to take on their work, then he could give him an advance. Vincent suspected something was wrong. Usually the boss was not so favorable to him. But now the guy needed money, and he had no choice but to bend under the manager. 2 workers behind his back were arguing whether he would agree to this job. One of them noted that disabled people generally have little chance of getting a job, and a cripple would definitely agree. The guy looked at them with an angry look. The workers decided to continue going about their business without interfering with other people's. The manager grinned at Vincent. The guy agreed to the job by reminding him about the advance. The manager, grinning again, agreed if he was ready to get to work right now. The manager thought that if the guy lives in a modest apartment, he still won't be able to escape anywhere and he will have to clean the restaurant until it shines. Before giving the advance, the boss told Vince to first clean the toilet on the 3rd floor. He agreed without hesitation. Taking a rag, the guy began to clean everything until it shined. After which I finished washing everything with a mop. All this work was not at all serious for him since his playing characteristics completely allowed him to do everything with great speed. Approached the boss. He reported that he had finished cleaning. He only asked in surprise whether he did it so quickly. He rightly noted that if he had known about the guy's talents earlier, he would not have had to hire those 2 cleaners. The manager handed him 800 bills. Vincent immediately went to the terminal to top up his account in the game. The boss thought that he already wanted to leave work. To the manager's exclamation, he replied that he urgently needed to replenish the money, and that as soon as he puts in the money, he will immediately return to work. The manager agreed, still believing that he couldn't escape anywhere even if he wanted to. The tense guy looked back at him. He just said that he would quickly return and start cleaning the floor in the lobby. Having deposited the money into his account, the guy immediately started opening the mobile game. Sweating from exertion, he waited for the loading. While making donut, he reminded himself that he was obliged to restore his leg. Vince happily clicked on the purchase. He received an incoming message saying that he could now restore his leg for 1 hour a day. Seeing this, Vincent was upset because he had worked so hard to completely cure his disability, but only received 1 hour of recovery. The guy continued to look at the phone in frustration. He was shown a tooltip for the technique. Each new level gives 2 to 3 hours more recovery time. Rationally assessing his new ability, Vincent realized that in difficult situations, this 1 hour could save him. Adding to this the fact that when he reaches the maximum level, he will receive a whole 9 hours, which can almost replace the complete cure of his disability, and he will be able to do what he did before. Looking at the phone, the guy tried to understand how to further develop this skill here. Scrolling through, he was shown levels that, as it turned out, cost money. Now Vince needed to find where to get another 1,000 to increase his level and increase the recovery to 3 hours. After such a long time of injury, the guy wanted to feel what it was like to have a healthy leg again. But after thinking rationally, he decided to use the technique only as a last resort. If he learned a new technique, he would get a new skill, but now their section was empty. But the merchant updated the items every day so he could rely on books. In the end, Vincent came to the idea that he had to earn as much money as possible. The guy couldn't wait to feel his restored leg. Walking back into the restaurant, he realized that work was no longer a problem for him. He could handle it in an hour. The guy no longer had the fear of being left without work. He could cope with this one in an hour and spend the remaining time on another. While Vincent was cleaning up, a waitress with soup walked quickly past him. While passing, she tripped on his mop. Noticing this, the guy apologized and asked if she was okay. The girl, barely able to hold the soup in her hands without spilling it, looked back at him angrily. Seeing her face, Vincent was embarrassed. She was very beautiful. She clearly should have worked as a model and not as a waiter. The girl snapped at him, calling him blind. Because of him, she almost spilled the soup. Vincent apologized, citing the fact that he was disabled. He thought to himself that the girl was beautiful on the outside, but evil on the inside. The waitress, not at all embarrassed, asked me to forget about it and advised me to be careful. Vincent was indignant that she was telling him this directly. Offended, he hoped that she would spill her soup after all. Meanwhile, the girl went on to carry someone's order. She was heading to the table with the men. Seeing who was sitting at the table, the guy tensed. The people who were sitting at the table were famous gangsters who didn't give a damn about anyone because they were big and strong. Among them, it was normal to intimidate innocents. The guy wasn't even sure which of them was in charge. During the time that Vincent worked in this restaurant, he was the only one who was able to stay away from them. He tried not to even look in their direction since they beat up all the waiters. One of the bandits grinned and looked at the waiter's girlfriend, and he tripped her. Seeing this, Vince realized that they wanted to start a new conflict. The girl, not noticing anything at all, casually walked straight. Having caught on her leg, the dishes flew out of her hands. The soup flew towards one of the bandits. Water from the soup fell directly on the bandit's hand, burning it. The fat man who got the soup hit the table with his fist in anger, trying to figure out who did it. The others addressed him like a boss and asked if he was okay. The girl looked stunned at the spilled soup, holding her hands. Looking at this, Vincent put his hand to his mouth out of tension. All this was not good. The boss began to furiously yell at the girl, saying that she was looking for death. The waitress, unafraid, told him to lower his tone. The girl wanted to apologize, even though she spilled the soup on purpose. But the fat man's behavior was terribly rude, and she changed her mind about doing it. In any case, it was not her fault, because one of them tripped her up. The bandits looked at the girl in surprise and irritation at the same time. Assessing the situation, Vince came to the conclusion that the girl is fearless. but does not think at all about what she is saying. If she continues her hysteria, the bandits will definitely do something bad to her. Apparently, this girl knows nothing about the society that surrounds her. The guy was interested in watching how everything would develop further. The boss of the bandits grinned. Pointing to the girl, he asked his subordinates if they saw how the girl spilled soup on him and behaved after that. One of the gangsters said that there was no one here to trip up, and asked the fat man's boss if he had ever been humiliated like that. From his words, the boss became even more angry, saying that today was the day. But then the subordinate asked him to calm down and take a closer look at the girl. At this time, the restaurant manager finally noticed this whole situation. The boss quickly intervened in their squabble, standing between the girl and the boss. He tried to make amends for the waitress's imaginary guilt by offering him free soup and compensation in the form of several more dishes. The boss of the gangsters grabbed the manager by the collar and started yelling at him. The boss, no longer knowing what to do, the manager offered to pay the boss's medical bills. The girl at this time began to be indignant, not understanding why the boss was a great man and she was a small thing. In her opinion, he was not worthy of free food. And besides, they were the first to pester her. The boss was already out of his mind from everything that had been said and happened. His eyes were bloodshot. He took the bottle and hit the manager in the face with all his might. All the restaurant visitors turned around at the sound and saw the whole situation and were horrified. Vincent also looked back in fear at this. The guy looked doomedly at this scene. This was not the first time this happened in a restaurant. The manager lay unconscious on the floor, blood dripping from his forehead. Remembering last time, the manager did the same. But this time he tried to humiliate the waitress even more. According to Vince, the manager acted as if he was trying to calm down the gangsters, as if he was more afraid of the girl than them. The boss began to approach the girl. She frightenedly took out her phone. The girl, threatening with her phone, showed the bandit the police number she had dialed, saying that he was breaking the law and she would report him. The fat man abruptly snatched the smartphone from her hands. He threw the phone back on the table. Mockingly, he asked the other visitors if anyone dared to call the police. The restaurant's visitors were horrified. They seemed numb. The boss made an expression on his face as if he had an idea. No one wanted problems. The waitress looked at him in fear. The fat man looked at her with enthusiasm. In his opinion, the girl's character was not so bad and he shouldn't have humiliated her. But internal instincts took over. Looking at his subordinate, the boss noticed that he had a keen eye for beautiful girls, and the waitress was very nice. Asking what they would do next, the subordinate suggested going to have fun with the waitress at karaoke. The rest of the bandits had already started drinking. The fat man grabbed the girl's hand, saying that they would now go have fun. The waitress shouted at him, asking whether he didn't care about the law at all. The boss replied that he was the law and laughed loudly. But realizing that the girl was trying to shame him, he changed his face. Furious, he picked up and threw the table. Dishes and cutlery flew from the table to the floor, after which he again grabbed the waitress by the hand, asking her to relax. She just screamed for help. At this time, the restaurant security pretended not to notice the bandits' actions. The boss tried to persuade the girl that if she went with him, he would forget today's incident. The situation could have turned out very badly. Vincent realized that something needed to be done. One of the visitors took the phone to call the police, but his friend pulled him back, saying that it was dangerous. The bandits could turn out to be dangerous hooligans. He told him that if he called the police, the bandits would make him disabled. Having said this, he pointed at Vincent, thinking that it was these bandits who made him crippled. At this time, Vince took the mop and broke it in half. Approaching the boss, he placed the sharp end of a piece of wood right at his throat. The guy ordered the bandit to take his hands off the girl. Subordinates jumped up from the table shouting at the cripple so that he should mind his own business. One of the waiters approached Vince, trying to dissuade him, thinking that he was going to certain death. The waiter said that he couldn't do anything. Vince annoyedly replied that he could do a lot of things. Vincent said that even though he is disabled, he remains human. The girl was surprised by his intervention. The boss, smiling evilly, thought that the disabled man was tired of living. He nervously asked the guy if he had ever killed. Vincent answered negatively, smiling. But even so, he said that he knows how to do it. Having passed the sharp edge of a piece of wood along the bandit's throat, a small amount of blood began to flow at the sight of the cut. Frightened, the boss let the girl go. The waitress immediately ran behind Vincent. Thinking to himself, Vincent realized that he was still not capable of murder. But he couldn't just let the gangsters go. The bandits almost surrounded him. If the guy lowers his stick, they will immediately attack him. Then an idea popped into Vince's head. Until that moment, he had completely forgotten about his trump card. He had an hour to recover his leg. This was a great opportunity to test technology. Stealthily taking out his phone from behind his back, he activated the technique. His leg felt completely different than before the injury. Images of martial arts techniques began to appear in the guy's head. Dozens of martial arts techniques flashed through his head in a split second. Now he was grinning at the bandits. Seeing such courage, the boss was confused. The fat man began to take off his t-shirt, saying that no one dares to interfere in his affairs. It became clear that he was a sumo wrestler. The boss had mafia tattoos on his shoulders and began threatening dire consequences for the cripple. The girl looked at him in fear. There were more bandits, and they were stronger, and his leg was injured. She begged the guy not to be a hero, saying that he had no chance against them. Vincent grinned, seeing that the fearless girl was finally scared. He asked her if she didn't believe in him at all. The guy looks confidently at the bandits. He said without fear that these hooligans are just small fry. The medical officer was tense because the cripple managed to show off at such a moment. In her opinion, he could barely walk, and then he was about to fight. The subordinates, taking out their batons, asked the boss to let them deal with the guy, promising that he would pay for everything. The bandits rushed at the disabled man. He got ready by standing up. The bandit made the first blow with a backhand, swinging his baton. Vince tried to dodge, but his leg was touched by the end of the baton. The girl looked at what was happening in horror, trying to cover her face with her hands so as not to see the beating of the cripple. She thought that his leg was about to give out. The gangsters were already confident in their victory. They thought that after this blow, the guy would end up in the hospital for a long time. Looking at the guy, they thought that he was only pretending to be a hero and was about to fall. But Vincent stood motionless, imposingly holding his hands on his belt. The girl looked at him in surprise. The bandits couldn't understand how he managed to stand on his feet after this. The girl had the same reaction. She made the assumption that she was artificial. Vince calmly exhaled. He lifted the leg of his left leg. An old scar from a knife was visible on it, the cause of his injury. The waitress was surprised to notice that the leg was real. She realized that he was not born disabled but was injured. Vincent reproached the gangsters for being scoundrels who beat a disabled person where he was injured. Now he began to mock the bandits. Their attacks were so weak, as if there were girls in their place. He teased them, asking if this was all they were capable of. Thinking that they were scared, he suggested that they attack first. One of the subordinates could not understand what was happening. Taking a chair, he hit the guy in the leg again. Vince, without trying to dodge, even exposed his leg to the blow. The bandit was 100% sure that this time he would definitely become disabled. The boss looked at this with satisfaction. He was sure that the cripple would die a terrible death. Vince once again mockingly suggested that the gangsters hit harder, pretending that he doesn't understand why they hit like girls. Mocking, he invited one of them to hit him and the attacker to move away. Looking at the bandits, he said that they had one attempt left. They looked at him incomprehensibly. The girl was happy about this unobvious development of events, noticing that the guy was very brave. Another subordinate prepared his hand to strike. He aimed his blow right at Vince's face, but the blow had no effect on the guy. It was as if he didn't feel them. Vince said out loud that the 3 blows dealt to him had no effect. The guy mentally compared all their blows to a bee sting. Although he was unable to dodge the first blow, the other 2 allowed him to determine the level of his strength. Getting into a boxing stance, the guy realized that within an hour, the guy felt that he was ready to fight with any opponent. Not to mention the hooligans. They would never be able to get the better of him. Vincent turned to the bandit who tripped the waitress and said that he saw it. He just looked at him in fear, trying to pretend that it wasn't him. With one jerk, Vince walked up to him and punched him in the face with all his might with his right fist. He didn't even have time to react and got hit. The subordinate fell without doing anything. He was already lying unconscious, drooling. The boss and other subordinates looked at their friend in shock. Vincent only chuckled contentedly. This was an insignificant opponent for him. Standing in a pose of triumph, Vince called the next one. The girl watched carefully. At the beginning, it seemed to her that the cripple just wanted to show off. But he turned out to be incredibly strong, as if he were in a martial arts film. The boss didn't even understand what happened. Looking back at his subordinates, he asked them. They just looked at him in fear, hoping that he would do something. The guy asked them if they still wanted to fight, beckoning them to him with his finger. The boss tisked in anger. He noticed how the restaurant visitors were giggling with the gang. This made him doubt himself. His subordinates asked him what they should do. The situation was truly humiliating for the boss. The guy cut him with a piece of wood and beat his subordinate. He had no right to retreat. He admitted out loud that he underestimated Vince, and at the same moment he rushed at him, swinging his left hand. The fat man's speed was useless for him. The boss was slow as a turtle, and called him a turtle because of his slow speed of impact.
The boss couldn't say anything in response.
He tried to hit him again, but with his right hand, Vince again easily parried to the side. Having done this, he again noticed the slowness of the gangster. Now it was the cripple's turn to show true speed. He roundhouse kicked him right in the face. Trying to protect his face, the boss put his hands up, but as a result of the blow, all his fingers were broken. The thug began to scream in pain looking at his broken fingers. The whole gang started running away from the restaurant. Finally, the boss promised the disabled man that this was not the end, and that he should wait for their next meeting. Vincent, like a true hero of a martial arts film, calmly watched after the bandits. Sitting down on a chair and lighting a cigarette, he cheerfully said that Daddy will be waiting for them. Assessing the fight, the young warrior came to the conclusion that 2 strength points was not enough, and his next goal would be a book of intelligence skills. Otherwise, he would get tired a few seconds after the start of the fight. Vince exhaled a cloud of smoke. Restaurant visitors joyfully applauded his skill. The guy, as if by chance, continued smoking while sitting on a chair. Everyone praised him. His friends began to come up, praising and apologizing for past grievances. The guy was not delighted with such hypocrisy. Vince felt uncomfortable because one of his friends tried to appease him by inviting him to karaoke. He refused his offer, saying that he would fool around in another place. Exhaling, he put his hand to his face from fatigue. Then the waitress approached him. She thanked him and apologized. She should have believed him from the very beginning. But she was worried about his leg. She was very grateful that the guy saved her. The girl introduced herself as Sheila and asked the guy's name. Vince introduced himself with his name. He didn't want to blame her. Looking at the girl's expression, she seemed happy to him. The manager finally woke up and ran up to Sheila, calling her second miss and asking if she was all right. The girl, swearing, asked him what the restaurant security guards had been doing all this time and that he should deal with them. The girl, pointing at Vince, said that the security was scared. Unlike him, the cripple, Sheila said that Vincent also works hard and blushingly asked not to call her second miss anymore. The manager had no choice but to agree. Vince was no longer surprised by the manager's attitude towards the waitress. He began to guess that the girl was not from an ordinary family. But the question remained, why did she work as a waitress? The manager said that everything is strange today. People don't understand what they want. The poor want to become rich, and the rich want to try themselves in the shoes of the poor. He also added that he can rely on Vince and his talents, calling him very cool. By offering a guy a permanent job in a restaurant, the manager wanted to curry favor with the girl. As a reward for today's feat, he promised Vincent a pleasant bonus. Vincent quietly asked who the girl really was. He replied that she was from the Shaw family and that she owned their hotel and restaurant. But the manager himself didn't know why she worked here. Today he saw her for the first time. Having given money to the guy, the manager asked him to take care of the girl. The boss needs to go to the hospital to treat his wound. Having examined the money, Vincent was a little disappointed by the stinginess of the manager. He gave him only 500. 500 was not enough, but now in front of him was a grateful girl from a rich family. The guy had an idea. How did he save her? By abruptly approaching the girl and addressing her as Miss, he embarrassed her. The guy asked if she really came from a rich family, and if this is so, then he would like her to show gratitude for her salvation. Sheila looked at the guy in disbelief. Vincent invited her to go outside, citing the fact that the restaurant was noisy. So they ended up near the exit from the restaurant. Vince asked if the girl understood what he wanted. It seemed to him that she was acting like an innocent who was only pretending to be poor. But the girl straightforwardly asked him to say what he wanted, because he saved her, and she would do everything possible to thank him. And she clarified that she will not forgive herself if she cannot fulfill this. The guy didn't expect her to answer so straightforwardly. He noticed that it was easy to talk to her. Getting down to business, Vince, rubbing his hands, said that he's been having a bad time with money lately, and the girl has a rich family. If she really wants to thank him, then how about this? Vince silently showed 2 fingers, because for a rich family, such an amount is just change. Sheila asked in surprise that the guy really only wanted money and saved her only because she was from a rich family. Calling the guy arrogant, she offered only 1. Vincent was unpleasantly surprised by the girl's stinginess. Sheila was already annoyed. Said upset that he only asked for 2,000, but one way or another, even 1,000 would be very useful for his needs. The girl, not understanding, asked in surprise if Vincent meant 2,000 when he showed 2 fingers. Immediately, she laughed. The girl misunderstood the guy's request. Vince didn't find it funny at all. It seemed to him that she was mocking his financial situation. It turned out that Sheila thought that the guy asked for 20,000, which she was puzzled by. She asked not to pay attention to her laughter. She was simply amused by the comicality of their conversation. Realizing the absurdity, she agreed to give 2,000 without any problems. Vince was shocked. It was a complete failure. The guy just missed the chance to get 10,000. The girl screamed, remembering something. She embarrassedly said that she forgot that she ran away from home, and now she has no money at all. Vincent asked her not to worry about it. She asked the guy to trust her so that he wouldn't think that she was deceiving him. She had some problems, but she had to solve them soon and give him 2,000, and also add interest to it, thus thanking the guy with 3,000. Sheila irritably noted that at least she, although she ran away from home, continues to earn money on her own. The girl told herself that it was only 3,000, and it wouldn't be difficult to pay it off. Vincent thought about it. Sheila's situation was quite sad. He was wondering what happened to her. The guy sat on the bench, and he invited the girl to sit down. He wanted to talk to her. Vince asked why she ran away from home. He assumed that her family treated her badly. Sheila looked at him embarrassed. This topic was quite painful for her. She answered, her parents didn't love her, and always put her older sister on a pedestal, leaving her without attention. Whatever the girl did, her parents said that it was wrong. Even when she poured them a mug of tea, they compared the tea with her sister's tea, and always said that hers was worse. While she was talking, her hands began to tremble. Although Sheila put in the same amount of effort, her sister was praised, and she was humiliated. Realized with sympathy that she was being humiliated even at home, the guy took out a cigarette. She went to work to prove that she could live on her own, and all this just to get recognition from her family. The guy jumped to the conclusion that she was tired of the rich life and wanted to feel poor. Putting his hand on her shoulder, Vince told her to forget about what happened today and always remember why she was here. She could forget about 3,000 and finally start enjoying life. Exhaling cigarette smoke, he encouraged her, saying that she would succeed. Sheila looked at him confused. Calling the guy an arrogant cripple, the girl promised to give him 3,000 so that he wouldn't look down on her. Laughing, the guy agreed. Looking at her, he said that she would succeed. Sheila noticed that Vincent is more insightful than his grandfather. The girl said that from today he will become her first friend, and they need to celebrate this event by buying beer. Then a blue car drove up to the restaurant. Vince and Sheila immediately noticed her. A girl with red hair got out of the car. She immediately began to approach them. The guy blushed when he saw her. She was the most beautiful woman in his memory. He was ready to spend 10 years of his life to win her hand. Turning to Sheila, she reproached her for coming to create problems. She ordered her to go home now. The girl's eyes began to water. The woman turned out to be her sister, Sheila snapped, saying that she never cared about her. The girl believed that she was nothing in her sister's eyes. The sister slapped Sheila in the face, saying that if she continues to carry this nonsense, she should not blame her for being rude. Sheila said offendedly that she hit her again. She would still say it even if her sister beat her to a pulp. In her own house she was trash. Everyone looked down on her, crying. She said that her sister doesn't understand, that everything revolves only around her. She shouldn't even have given birth in this family. And if everyone doesn't like her so much, then she'll go somewhere far away. Raising her hand again, the sister ordered her to shut up. But this time Vincent intercepted the hand, asking the woman if she had already done enough. Sheila looked at him dumbfounded. She didn't think that the guy would stand up for her in front of his sister. The guy let go of his hand, saying that he was not so stupid as to hit a woman. The sister, rubbing her hand angrily, asked who he was. Vince ignored the question and said that Sheila was his friend. The sister again asked who he was to be friends with her, but Vince again avoided answering by saying that unlike her, he treats her normally. The guy's dodging questions began to anger her sister, and Sheila asked her sister to forget about him. The girl thanked Vincent for his help, but asked not to get involved in her conflict with her family. Looking at her, he asked if she forgot what she said earlier. A recent memory flashed in Sheila's head. She no longer wanted to fall back on the same rake. The girl's fist clenched in determination. She told the guy that she remembered everything. Fear of her sister no longer meant anything. And she said thank you to Insu for the reminder. The cripple was pleased with the changes in the girl's mood. My sister's security guard approached her, whispering something in her ear. She was very surprised at the words spoken. Looking at Vincent, she asked if he saved her sister. Visibly delighted, she thanked him without waiting for an answer. Sister asked what he wanted as a reward. Although Vincent needed money, asking a person with such an impassive face was a bad idea. He needed to figure out a way out of this situation. Not understanding the silence of the cripple, the sister decided to take the first step by offering the guy 100,000. Sheila incomprehensibly asked her sister why she was doing this. She tried to interrupt her by saying that Vincent saved her. and therefore it was she who should thank him. In addition, the girl offered 3,000 as a reward and asked her sister not to interfere in her affairs. Sheila looked at the guy embarrassedly, hoping that he would support and confirm her words. Vince confirmed that his sister has nothing to give him since Sheila has already promised him 3,000. For him, 100,000 was a really tempting offer. But if he took it, he would break the agreement. Sheila looked at him joyfully. Seeing her smile, my sister was very surprised, because she had never seen her like this. Realizing that the guy would not back down, his sister offered him a good job. The best she could offer him was 10,000 a month. He asked him to take his time and think carefully. Vincent was excited about her offer. A permanent salary of 10,000 could make his life much easier. The offer was very tempting. But the guy really didn't want to upset Sheila. If he agreed, it would look like a betrayal, after which they would stop being friends. In the end, Vince decided to refuse, citing the fact that there were many ways to earn money, and if he refused, he would not die of hunger. If that was all, then he suggested they leave. Sister got angry again. Grabbing Sheila by the hand and leading her into the car, she ordered her to go home with her. Whether she wanted it or not, Incenta was grabbed by security at that time. He could not do anything. The cripple could only tell his sister to let Sheila go. Because she was being pulled, the girl tripped on a pebble. She fell to the ground, hitting herself painfully. My sister tried to say that she didn't want to. Getting up, the girl already began to cry, asking the one if she was her older sister, because she was just trying to break her. Sheila began to leave, saying that in the end there was no one in the family who would love her. She thought that everyone hated her. The girl started running away from her sister, but she didn't have time to do anything. Vince yelled at his sister, asking what was wrong with her, and said that someday she would be in her place. She snapped, saying that this would not have happened if it weren't for him. She started yelling back at him. The woman was worried about Sheila's safety more than anyone else because she was her only sister. In her opinion, people like Vincent basically have no understanding of real family, and that he doesn't dare read to her lectures without knowing about her life. Vincent stood calmly and listened while the guards restrained him. Suddenly he broke out. Having taken out the photograph, he showed it to Sheila's sister, saying that the Shaw family immediately seemed familiar to him, and she recognized the photograph. When she saw the photo, she was taken aback. It showed a theme park built on the side of a poor neighborhood. This happened 5 years ago. Then his family lost their house, and the compensation was not enough even to buy the graves of his parents. The guy told her that 4 years ago he lost his parents, was injured, that his relatives abandoned him, and he spent all the remaining money on treating his injured leg. The guards, listening to him, did not dare to approach him. Vincent didn't stop. He said that he injured his leg trying to save an unfamiliar girl from a robber. But she didn't even bother to visit him in the hospital to thank him for saving him. He asked the woman if he looked ugly, lifting his t-shirt to reveal a scar on his chest, not to mention the accident 4 years ago. If his leg had not been injured, he probably would have been able to save his parents before the car exploded. He asked the woman if she could have jumped into the burning car, hinting that she has no right to call him an arrogant bastard. The woman had nothing to say. She felt terrible that her family did this to Vincent. Suddenly, the security guard told her that they urgently needed to return to the company because of problems that had arisen. They needed to be resolved as soon as possible. The woman clenched her fist angrily. She didn't like being the one who decided everything. No one thought about her problems. When leaving for the last time, she told the guy that Sheila had run away towards the lake, and if everything he said was true, then he needed to pick her up and take her home to her family. Looking at the car leaving, the guy wanted to ask her why she shouldn't look for it herself if she was so worried. The lake towards which the girl ran was quite deep. The guy began to be afraid that she might do something bad to herself because of a quarrel with her sister. Having found the nearest taxi, he asked to take him to the lake as quickly as possible. Having arrived, as soon as he got out of the car, he immediately began to run towards the lake. The guy shouted throughout the park so that the girl would not commit suicide, thereby trying to find her. A couple passing by looked at him in disbelief. One of the couple suggested that Vincent had done something bad to the girl and is now afraid that she will kill herself. Suddenly, someone kicked him from behind. It was Sheila. She reproached Vince for making her feel awkward because he shouted at the whole park. Not understanding why she kicked him, he yelled at her, saying that he was actually worried about her. Sheila asked why he was looking for her. She said that she would never commit suicide. She just wants to prove that she can be as successful as her sister and even better. After making sure that she really wouldn't do it, Vince said that he knew everything but decided to just tease her. Grabbing him by the collar, she suspiciously asked why he was walking to the lake for so long, thinking that the guy had accepted his sister's proposal. If this was so, then Sheila would like to pretend that they had never met. The guy looked at her and began to tell his story. Already sitting on the bench, Sheila listened to the guy. The girl thought. She got up from the bench. Vince asked what was the matter. Sheila said that she would not be able to give him 3,000 in the near future. But since Vincent is really poor, she thought about how to create a win-win situation for both of them. Vince asked with interest what she was up to. Sheila's sister offered him a job with a good salary, if he agreed. He would receive the money he needed so much, and at the same time he would be able to spy on his sister and find out the situation in the company. In addition, the girl came up with a great way to surprise her family. The guy wondered how he could be undercover asking the girl if she was sane. Sheila pitifully said that she had nowhere else to ask for help and he was her only friend. Vincent had no choice but to agree. Sitting on a bench, the boy thought that this was not such a bad situation. And now he could earn money without disappointing the girl. After all, it was good. Vince decided to ask her future plans. Sheila, already starting to leave, said that her future plans were her secret, and asked Vince to be a good boy and stay at home waiting for her call. It was already getting close to night. Vincent had a feeling that he had been deceived. The white moon illuminated his humble home. The guy took out his phone and began to research the technique. He realized that if he wanted to rise to a new level, he would need a whole month of standard cultivation, but he couldn't wait that long. His character was displayed on the screen with indicators of the strength of intelligence agility. The first two were equal to 2 and only intelligence was 0. To instantly improve his technique, he needed a lot of money, not to mention the fact that he needed to pay off some debts. The guy had to study all the features of the game. I'm trying to study the game system. Vincent opened the game card, but all systems were closed to him, and only the market and the interface for training remained. Then instructions for studying the system were revealed to him. For each study, he had to spend 5 units of energy. When he only had 10 per day, this inequality caused dissatisfaction in the guy. He could explore only twice a day. From his research, the village of Yellow Sand and the ancient path were discovered. He decided to start with the ancient path. There he found a treasure where the coins were. So he realized that research is an alternative way to get coins. Suddenly, he saw an offer for a research event in the Yellow Sand village. Although he didn't understand what the event was and what he would get for it, he didn't care and immediately pressed the enter button. Suddenly, he moved into the body of his character inside the game. A view of the village opened before his eyes. Vince was surprised at how real everything was. The view was indistinguishable from real life. Noticing a sitting old man, he decided to approach him. Approaching him, he asked what was happening in the village which was nearby. Pointing to the woman lying next to her, the old man said that she was poisoned. He saved her. But at the same time, he was poisoned by an astral sect because of which he could not move. He asked Vincent to help the woman and then him. 2 buttons appeared in front of the guy. Accept and reject. Apparently, he instantly started the quest. The cost of the quest was 4 coins, and despite the fact that his energy would drop to 0 until the next day, this caused dissatisfaction with the guy. It turned out that even the quest cost money. While thinking, the guy came to the conclusion that he should help those in need, especially the man who was trying to save an innocent girl, although he needed money. But faced with such a situation, he had to give the decision to his heart and help the old man. Pressing the accept button, the in-game voice told the guy that his coins were now 0. The old man moved from his place, and the girl began to rise, asking if she had been poisoned. The old man, pointing at Vince, called him the savior. Seeing this, the guy realized that this virtual world is truly magical. The old man introduced himself as Li Wang and decided to thank him by giving him 2 books, saying that this is all he has. Immediately, the woman and the old man disappeared. Vince only had time to say goodbye. The books given to him were basic techniques of medicine and also increasing intelligence. In the books, it was described that in order to increase the intelligence technique by 1 level, he needed to cultivate for 4 hours. While studying basic medicine, he would receive 10 points and would be able to harvest. The guy seemed to recognize the name of the old man from the book of basic medicine. As far as he remembered, it was a very high-class doctor. The exchange was very profitable. After spending 4 coins, the guy received 2 whole books of medical skills. Now he received the skill of collecting herbs, and assumed that if the game was connected with him, he would be able to heal himself. By pressing the explore button, he instantly moved to real life. Vince never thought he could learn medical skills, even though it was the basics. But now he could treat himself in emergency situations, or minor injuries. Having acquired basic knowledge of pharmacology, the guy made the assumption that he was already much better than medical graduates, and moreover, could collect herbs. Now this could be a great way to make money. If he can search well in the market, he will be able to sell unique herbs to rich people. He will need a lot of game coins. Now the acquired medical skill will play an important role in his plan to restore his leg. After so many years of long waiting, he can finally see the light deep in the darkness. It was time to go to bed tomorrow. He will have to go to the market. Going to bed, Vincent put his glasses on the table. Suddenly everything in his eyes became blurry. He made the assumption that his myopia had increased again, but he had no money at all for new glasses. But even without them, he could not go anywhere. Putting his glasses back on and taking them off, Vincent was surprised to notice that his vision was completely restored. Perhaps it was his cultivation effect last night. He couldn't sleep with joy. The next morning, Vincent went to the market to buy herbs. He was still glad that he no longer needed to wear glasses. Rare herbs would be very difficult to obtain in stores intended for them. He should have found them in a simple kiosk. But then problems could arise if someone found out about their value. Although this was not important, since there are many unique herbs not registered in medical books. Passing by a store, a guy noticed a pot. Noticing that it was a wild plant, having looked at it, he realized that it was dying. The leaves of the plant withered and the branches were bent. But some sprouts near the roots were covered with green petals. If he was right, wildflowers were parasitizing on the roots. In order to determine the exact age of the plant, he would have to dig up the roots and wash away the soil. But looking at the number of petals, he assumed that it was worth a lot. The old seller turned to Vincent. He said that these are wild herbs from the high mountains, and they can be used as medicine, and they are very cheap. A pot costs only 50 won. Vincent asked if it was too expensive to sell a pot for 50, when others sell the same plants for about 20s. Pointing to the plant, he offered to sell it to the old man for 30. The old man, saying that he was a Jew, refused and offered to sell him for no less than 35. Vincent, artistically leaving, wished good luck in selling such a plant for 35. The old man, trying to stop the guy, agreed to sell it for 30. I turn around. The guy involuntarily grinned at himself and his sharp mind. Having walked around the entire market, Vincent managed to snatch only this plant, and he was already on his way home. He was already thinking about how to sell this pot at a good price, and how difficult it would be. Suddenly his phone rang. A girl screamed at him from the phone. It was Sheila. As it turned out, she was already waiting for him at the apartment. Vince said that it was still very early and suggested meeting in the afternoon. The girl agreed, saying that she had found a way to earn money, and that he could earn up to 100,000 if he took up this business. Vincent was stunned when he heard the amount of earnings. Having heard this, Vincent now shouted into the phone asking her to wait and that he would come over now. Sheila stood looking at her watch. The guy walked towards her. The girl asked displeasedly why he was making him wait so long, and noticing the lack of glasses asked for them. The guy said that he didn't need them, he was much more interested in work, and he wanted to get down to business quickly. The girl snapped at the fact that he was only interested in money, saying that his views were absolutely insignificant. Vince just asked that he spent 10 to quickly get here, only for her to yell at him, and jokingly offered to reimburse her for this money. Approaching the car, she said that they would sort it out later, but now they need to go. Teasing the girl, the guy called her car a VIP class car and her the second daughter of the Shaw family. This made the girl laugh. While they were driving, Vince managed to fall asleep, but soon the girl woke him up. Sheila hurriedly got out of the car and urged the guy. Looking at what was in front of him, Vince was surprised and did not understand why she brought him here. A huge skyscraper of Sister Sheila's company opened before his eyes. The guy asked if the girl really wanted to let him there alone. He didn't want to go to her sister. Taking Vince inside the building, she reassured him that her sister's offices are on the upper floors and where they are is her department, since she became the boss and Vincent is her reliable subordinate. Then she can share her earnings with him. Out of impatience, Vincent immediately asked how much he would earn. Because of Vincent's greed, Sheila playfully hit him on the head and told him to follow her to the basement. While going after the girl, Vince had a question. Why wasn't she allowed to use one of the 18 floors of the skyscraper, and she came to work in the basement? Not understanding what department could be in the basement, he assumed that it was a parking lot or a warehouse. The girl opened the door to the basement in anticipation and asked Vince how he liked the office, noting that it was much more spacious than his sister's office. The guy had a view of a large room filled with boxes, where there was only one table and chair. Vince asked Sheila, clarifying who from the family gave her the premises. She only asked him to shut up. The guy, asking Sheila where her house was, said that he would talk to her father. The girl asked to forget about it. Putting her hand on the box, she enthusiastically said that everyone starts from the bottom, and this is the basic rule. In front of her were legal products that can be sold well. if they can find buyers, they will receive a good bonus. If they sold a lot and got a lot, it wouldn't be as bad as Vincent thinks. Vincent really felt sorry for her, because her family treated her badly. No matter how hard she tried, the guy didn't want her to remain an orphan whom everyone looked down on, like he himself once became. Out of anger at the unfair world, Vince hit the table with his fist. The girl excitedly apologized, thinking that the guy was angry because of the bad room. She said pitifully that she had no one else to help her except him. Vincent lit a cigarette. Leaving the premises, he said that he agreed to work here, but only on one condition. Sheila was ready to fulfill any. The girl had to cry while he looked after the progress. When she finished, she could express everything that had accumulated in her. Vince promised that he would always be by her side and help with anything. Sheila looked at him confused. Having slammed the door, Vincent continued to smoke. A long cry was heard behind the door. After some time, they began to look at the contents of the boxes together. They were all at a standard price, and if they sold them a little cheaper, they would have gone into the red. It was clear that it would not be easy. Jokingly calling the girl crazy, the guy threw her papers. In response, she importantly asked to call her manager. Looking at the products, he decided to find out if she wanted to throw them away, because if so, she could not surpass her sister. The girl responded by asking what she should do then. Pointing to the box, he said to look at its bottom signature. Looking at the account book, she did not understand what he meant. But then, to my surprise, I noticed my sister's signature on it. The girl realized that if she could sell her sister's goods, this would be the best proof of her effectiveness. The guy noticed that they are not here to throw away waste, but to turn it into treasures. Her family looked down on them, but now they are ready to prove them wrong in practice. Agreeing with Vince, Sheila decided to take all the goods that were marked by her sister. After a while, having collected all the goods, she asked the guy to look at it. Looking at the box, Vincent doubted that Sheila's sister was really so capable. The girl was silent. Having examined the power bank from his sister's box of goods, he noticed its poor condition. Apparently, Sheila's sister was very capable in the consumer real estate market, but had no problems in the merchandise area. Sheila should have figured it out on her own since her sister failed to do so. The next thing the girl pulled out was tea. The tea was completely uncompetitive. It was written on it that it refreshes the mind, but most people preferred coffee or cola instead. Then Vince had an idea. Sheila's tastes were much better than her sister's. Of all the goods, tea was the most promising, and so he asked the girl if she could come up with a way to improve tea and how it could be promoted on the market. Having encouraged her with the words, "Believe in yourself," he asked about fresh ideas. The girl replied that the department had a small budget, and besides, they needed professionals to conduct experiments with marketing. When she finished, she suggested finding another way, but Vince took out the plant that he bought at the market this morning. Asking her not to rush, he told her to dig up the ground around the plant. There, the girl saw things tangled around the roots. They were called wildflower roots. The most important thing about them was that they helped cleanse the blood, treat cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases. The girl was happy, because at first she thought that Vince simply had nothing to do, and he bought this pot. Ostensibly offended, he suggested using a plant to improve tea. Rose and peony would be best suited to the roots. Sheila tore off part of the flower root and washed it under the tap. Having heard about the properties of the root, she made the assumption that they could help in his treatment. Vince confirmed, saying that he uses them as tea. In response, she asked if it was worth it. The guy handed her a mug of tea with an offer to try. He was not sure that his medical foundations were very useful, but if they still turned out to be so, then he would have a bright future and a lot of money. If he now failed with tea, he would be very ashamed of his professional behavior. Turning to God, he asked to finally change his life. Vincent excitedly asked whether the tea had any beneficial effect. The girl felt the place of her heart. Grabbing the guy by the collar, the girl asked what exactly he did with the tea, and whether he had famous doctors in his family. The guy didn't understand what she meant. Sheila said that yesterday she slept very poorly and was very exhausted. But after one sip of tea, her energy was restored and she felt like she was God. In addition, it was surprising that with hereditary heart disease, most of her family members could not work. But after drinking tea, her heart calmed down. Vincent was happy to see that this was really useful. Now he already had a question about how much he needs to work to earn enough money. Vincent already saw how they were trying to rise to the top of sales. Sheila offered to secretly give her sister tea and accurately confirm the effects. Vince was excited because he liked to sneak peeks. Going up the elevator, the guy asked if it was okay if they went up like this, but the girl reassured him by saying that the company respected her reputation and no one would dare stop them. As she exited the elevator, she told him to do his best to walk with his head down so as not to let anyone remember his appearance. The workers who were standing on the floor immediately greeted Sheila, calling her second mistress. Turning to the second mistress, the workers asked each other what she could do here. Vincent looked at them incredulously, but the girl told him to go without paying attention. They entered a luxurious room. It was a private living room prepared for Sheila's family. Moving the picture aside, she pointed to the surveillance apparatus created at her direction to monitor people. She asked Vincent not to tell anyone about him. Vincent really liked this thing. He was looking forward to espionage. He asked Sheila if her sister could change clothes in this living room. Vincent's vulgar thoughts displeased the girl. Hitting him on the head, she said that her sister would never change clothes here, and in principle, he is not thinking about that. After turning on the button of the device, a view of another room appeared in front of them, where her sister and a man with a boyfriend stood. Looking at the man of men, the girl exclaimed that it was her uncle. The son, turning to his father, asked to simply tell him the reason why they had gathered today. The man asked Sheila's older sister Chloe if she knew about his intention to come here. The woman chuckled and suggested that he wanted her to give up her place in the company. The uncle noticed that she was saying this as if it were very scary. In his opinion, Chloe should have rested, because the company's performance had not increased in any way during the 2 years of her management. Cousin James added that he had a master's degree in management education and could improve production by 10% in 2 months. Chloe snapped that if he has such a desire to become the head of the company, then she should contact her grandfather since he is the head of the company, and if he agrees, then he has the right to become one. Sheila's hands clenched into a fist. Uncle irritably asked Chloe to at least show respect to him if she doesn't respect her cousin. She only asked in surprise what kind of politeness we could be talking about, because he brought so many people to force her to renounce power. Vincent will ask who Chloe is talking to. She answered that it is her uncle, and suggested that they better set up the camera so that they could see everything. The girl pressed the zoom button. The camera in the bushes on the other side of the room made a quiet sound. Seeing exactly what was happening in the room, the girl was stunned, and the guy tensed. There was a large number of guards behind the uncle. He directly said that Chloe now had no choice. The woman had no words. The situation could have turned out very badly. Vince was surprised that her sister did not have security. Sheila replied that she probably fired them in order to reduce company expenses. The guy wanted to offer to call Sheila's grandfather, but she said that he unfortunately fell last evening and fell into a coma, and will not wake up anytime soon. They didn't know what to do now. My uncle's people will start acting any minute. Having decided not to wait for the inevitable, the guy began to walk towards the negotiation room, telling Sheila not to open the living room door to anyone except him. The girl did not understand what exactly he wanted to do. Slamming the door, he confidently went to save her sister. To catch up, Sheila tried to say that her uncle's guards were retired Special Forces soldiers, which equalized the guy's chances to 0. Already running up to the door, the guy complained to himself that he constantly gets into all sorts of troubles. Having knocked down the door of the meeting room, he immediately mocked the guards because they were threatening a defenseless woman. James and Uncle looked at him calmly, realizing that Chloe had an assistant. The woman didn't understand where he came from. Vince rhetorically asked where her security had gone. Uncle's guards, not taking him seriously, ordered him to hide. Covering Chloe with himself, the guy asked if they needed to use violence, because they were a family, and they should have mutual understanding with each other. Uncle was surprised by Vincent's knowledge. Chloe couldn't believe that the guy could come to her aid because of herself, and not because of Sheila. But she didn't understand how he knew what was going on here. Chloe was reproached by her uncle for being arrogant because she brought a lame man into a fight with serious security. James added mockingly that the cripple couldn't do anything. But before he could finish speaking, he flew into the wall from Vincent's direct blow to the body. No one expected such an outcome. The uncle was furious, shouting and ordering the guards to deal with Vincent. Taking out a baton, the guards rushed at the cripple. With a roundhouse kick, Vincent knocked out 2 people at once. The rest of the bodyguards were stunned by such a quick blow, and the fact that their colleagues were lying on the ground. Without stopping, Vince ran up to the stunned guard. Grabbing his head, he threw him to the ground, teasing the others. The security could not get out of shock. A new blow flew at the next guard, but he covered himself with a baton. It bent. Uncle and Chloe carefully watched what was happening, not believing their eyes. Huddled together, they tried to analyze their opponent. According to one of the guards, bending batons was beyond the power of a person, much less a cripple. He was very lucky that he managed to block the blow, otherwise he would not have even been able to get up. Puzzled, they asked him if he was even human. Mocking, the guy said that they can't even cope with a cripple. Sheila watched the fight through the security camera in delight. Standing in the middle of the room, Vince didn't understand why the guards weren't attacking. One of the guards began to take a gun out of his coat. Without waiting for him to get him, the guy jerked over the sofa that stood in the middle of the room and headed towards the boss. Grabbing a knife, he put it to his uncle's throat and ordered him not to move. While holding the boss hostage, he ordered the guards to leave the room. Any movement could lead to the death of their boss. His uncle nervously tried to threaten him that he would go to prison for what he might do. Turning to Chloe, he began to beg her to stop the guy, saying that they could discuss everything in words. The woman excitedly asked him to let her uncle go because, after all, they were relatives, and this conflict could not bring anything good. Still holding his uncle, he told him to first order the guards to leave the meeting room. He fearfully agreed. Having slightly cut his uncle's throat, Vincent ordered the guards to leave. They had no choice but to hide their weapons and leave. There are only 3 people left in the room. Chloe suggested forgetting about today's incident. She didn't want her grandfather to find out about it when he came out of his coma. Uncle tisked, but agreed to pretend that nothing happened, asking if she was happy now. Because of his impudence, Vincent got angry and hit him so that he fell. Grabbing him by the collar, he told him that he would not kill him here, but he could wait for the moment when he was left alone, for example, when there was a blind spot in the surveillance cameras. Chloe was scared by this guy's behavior. He only asked not to blame him for the fact that her uncle does not obey. Realized to herself that despite the fact that the guy is rude, without him, she wouldn't know what to do now. Approaching her uncle, she again asked to forget today. Uncle sat down on the sofa, and under Vince's supervision, agreed to forget about everything. After this, the guy went back to the surveillance room, where he was met by a delighted Sheila. Now she already called him Master Vince, talking about how magnificent he is. Pointing to the sofa, she invited him to rest. He agreed, and asked to pour him a mug of tea. The girl couldn't believe that he managed to defeat all the bodyguards, and that her uncle lost this time. And besides, he left her sister in the room so calmly that she even kicked the trash can. Still not understanding what is happening in Sheila's family, he will ask about the position of her uncle in her family. The girl replied that his uncle was ignorant from childhood and always looked for unscrupulous ways. In the end, he became a gangster. His grandfather did not want to let him into family affairs and kicked him out of the house. But in recent years he had success, and his grandfather decided to let him in. Now her father opened a branch in America, and therefore her uncle decided to take advantage of the position of the eldest son, to seize power in the company, and get the post of chairman. And with the help of his grandfather, he became completely unstoppable. Vince called James a windbag who won't get anything. The girl confirmed his guess, and said that that's why he would start thinking about unscrupulous plans. They should have figured out how to counteract him. The guy asked how grandfather should treat Sheila. She replied that besides the prejudiced attitude and overestimation of her older sister, she is 10,000 times better than her uncle. Then she realized what the guy was getting at. His idea was to wake up his grandfather, in which case his uncle would moderate his ardor. Fortunately for this, they had special tea for heart disease. The delighted girl agreed. The experiment was supposed to take place today. Out of delight, the girl said it too loudly, forgetting that her sister was nearby in the office. Grandfather's huge mansion was filled with guards. Vincent, sneaking unnoticed, climbed up the wall to the very top with a running start. Sheila, looking at this from the bushes, would never have believed that a cripple could be so agile if she didn't know Vincent. Climbing onto the windowsill, Vincent jumped into Sheila's grandfather's room. He was very lucky that there was no one in the room at that time. Heaven was clearly on his side. Suddenly, someone started opening the doors. The guy didn't understand who could visit the patient at such a time. A tall girl with light pink hair walked into the room. She was so beautiful that the guy got a nosebleed. Seeing him, she was very frightened. Realizing that now the girl would call for help, Vincent rushed as fast as he could towards her. Grabbing her and closing the door behind her, he tried to calm her down, saying that he was not a criminal. The girl dropped the paper she was holding in her hands. To prevent her from screaming, the guy covered her mouth with his hand and said that he was not a bandit. But if she tried to scream, the consequences would be very bad. The girl hooted in agreement. As soon as he removed his hand, she immediately began to question him. Vincent, cutting off, asked about the condition of her patient. Picking up the papers, she said that his heart was very weak and she was giving him special drugs. But the main thing now was to wait for the arrival of an American specialist. In response, Vince asked who had been visiting him lately. The girl replied that besides her, there was a servant and an older lady from his family. From the sleeping face of his grandfather, Vincent determined that everything was much worse than the doctor thought. Grandfather was clearly poisoned. Vincent asked if his uncle visited him. The doctor answered negatively. Finally, the guy asked her name. The girl's name was Lucy. In response, she asked him. Vince decided to hide his name. The girl annoyedly replied that it was disrespectful towards her. Approaching his grandfather, the guy asked Lucy how his illness could be cured. She replied that the eldest miss said to wait for the specialist to arrive, and before that, just administer special drugs. The guy didn't understand why wait for a foreign specialist when it was already clear that the matter was not at all in his grandfather's weak heart. It was necessary to act now. Grandfather Shane was poisoned. Vincent understood this only by looking at him. The girl was surprised by the guy's abilities. She only had assumptions about this. She could not check them. Examining Shane's torso, he decided to clearly show signs of poisoning by pressing near the heart. The skin immediately turned purple, and black vein-like stripes appeared around the heart. Vincent didn't know this poison well. It was called heart-eating poison. It acted slowly. The guy knew only one risky treatment method. It was impossible to wait any longer. Taking the breathing tube, he stuck it straight into Shane's torso. The probability of success did not exceed 30%. Taking the pipe into his mouth, he inhaled deeply. The girl could not understand the guy's actions, because the patient had no problems breathing. Lucy was terrified, thinking that he was going to kill the patient.
Taking the roots of the leaf, he gave them to his grandfather to swallow.
Clear from his face that he felt much better, despite the fact that the option was cruel. It turned out to be very effective. The poisoned blood infected the lungs, turning into a poisonous gas. With the help of a tube, Vince inhaled and exhaled, saving Shane from a slow death. Suddenly, the door to the room opened. A man from the corridor shouted to Vincent with displeasure. It was Uncle. He asked Lucy what the guy was doing here, as if not noticing the pipe in his hands. Now turning to the guards, he ordered them to grab the guy. Suddenly, someone behind the guard ordered to stop. It was Chloe, coming out from behind the crowd of security. She asked the guy what he forgot here. Rushing him to answer, she threatened to call the police if he did not give a reasonable explanation. Vincent did not immediately give an answer, which is why Chloe reproached him for his slow reaction. Vince smilingly asked if she really didn't understand what he was trying to do. Chloe asked directly about this. Lucy, realizing that now everything could go wrong, put a knife to Shane's throat, saying that they are now having an important operation, and if it is interrupted, then his grandfather will die. Chloe excitedly asked her not to do anything stupid. Vincent joked that Lucy could think quickly. She replied that she learned from him and they could explain everything later. The uncle asked his niece if she would really watch what was happening. Vince realized that he was just looking for trouble. Apparently, the uncle was the one who poisoned Shane's grandfather. After analyzing the situation, Chloe realized that there was no point in Vincent harming her grandfather. And, apparently, he wanted to save her by waking him up. Turning to the guy, she said that he has no connections with her family, and if he wants something, then let him come to her. Without waiting for an answer, she decided to trust him this time too, but threatened that if he failed, he would not be able to cope with the consequences. Holding a tube in his mouth, Vince muttered to Lucy to stop the bleeding and asked her to pass the tube to her. Having stopped using the tube, the guy took a test tube. Immediately, he began to take off his pants. Lucy blushed, not understanding what he would do now. She turned away embarrassedly, calling him names. Meanwhile, Vincent began to urinate into the test tube. Having finished his business, the disabled man turned around. Chloe and his uncle did not want to look at him. Saying that his labors should not be in vain, he poured the entire jar into grandfather Shane's mouth. Chloe furiously started yelling at him, saying that if he has something against him, then he should deal with her and not humiliate the girl. Suddenly, Shane woke up and got up from the bed all blue. He was about to throw up. Chloe's emotions immediately changed from anger to joy. It was clear from her uncle's face that he was still dissatisfied. Vincent justified himself by saying that what he did was an ancient method of aliens, which involved making a person vomit out of disgust. In the puddle that the grandfather vomited, a black worm was floundering, which was clearly the cause of the poisoning. Uncle immediately tried to crush him, but Vince put a can on him just in time. Turning to his uncle, he noticed that he clearly wanted to destroy the evidence. Having finally woken up, Shane complained that he felt disgusting. Unable to contain her joy, Chloe exclaimed that he had finally woken up. Grandfather confirmed that he was completely fine, but felt disgusting. Not understanding why there were so many people around him, he asked everyone to leave. Chloe asked again if he was okay. While thinking about it, Shane said that he knew his body very well, and the medicine was really effective but tasted terrible. Noticing a satisfied Vincent, he asked if he saved him. The guy confirmed his guess. Today's situation was resolved in his favor, and now he could only leave, which is what he asked for. But Chloe stopped him, trying to find out what he wanted as a reward, not understanding why he was in such a hurry. She wanted to offer him a worthy reward, referring to Shane. He agreed, asking if he drank something that an ordinary person would not drink. Vincent, trying to explain himself, noticed that human urine does not contain any harmful substances. Having cleaned his mouth with water, Shane was surprised by such a strange method, but appreciated its effectiveness by asking who taught him this method. The guy referred to the ancient master, saying that he knew traditional and lost medicine perfectly. And he also asked Shane not to be offended, because his actions were spontaneous. This was enough to get Shane's gratitude. He himself would not mind meeting Vincent's master. Chloe immediately told her grandfather that the guy only accepts money. Looking at him, she offered him 100,000. The amount was very necessary for the guy. With this money, he can buy everything he needs. But he understood that a person who recognizes money, and not people, cannot be happy. Was he really such a person? Vince asked Chloe. Realizing that he would not accept money, she offered him a place in her company. After asking Shane whether this was a worthy reward, the guy was hired. A man entered the room and addressed Shane. The servant whispered something to him. By the look of his grandfather, he was clearly unhappy and asked to escort Vincent to the exit because he needed to meet someone. Leaving the room, Shane threatened his son that if something happened to the guy, he would hold him accountable. Grandfather was always calm and just looked at the world. He even laughed because he drank urine. But now he left in a hurry. This stressed Chloe. She asked her uncle who grandfather wants to meet. Vincent invited her to follow him if she was so interested. He could leave on his own, and no one would have to accompany him. Chloe already wanted to agree, but her uncle insisted on finding someone to accompany him. They both already had to go. She said that a man would come for Vincent and reminded him that tomorrow he needed to contact her in the company. Uncle and Chloe left. Closing the door, the guy jokingly waved after. Vince couldn't just sit still. He really wanted to know what was going on inside the Shaw family. Climbing out through the window, he climbed through the windowsill to the large living room, which apparently served as a meeting room. 3 people were sitting in the room. They were Chloe, Uncle, and Shane. Apparently the mysterious person had already left, but the guy still decided to stay in case useful information was leaked. After lighting a cigar, the uncle began to talk about the problems of financing in the company. Their income decreased by 60%. Shane equated this to $100 million, checking with Chloe. Confirming the difficult situation of the company, the woman asked for 3 months to correct the situation and compensate for all losses. The uncle immediately reproached her for the fact that because of her new product, the company stood still, and as a result could not sell anything. Noticing the girl's business acumen, he at the same time took her little experience as a disadvantage. Chloe wanted to snap back, but her grandfather stopped her, trying to separate his children, and told her to leave her ideas at the same time, asking her son for new ideas. My uncle's new idea was to buy a piece of land in the West. The problem is that it costs 3 times the usual amount they pay. Grandfather was unhappy with the tripling of the amount. 3 times as much was too much, especially since the uncle could not guarantee that their family would earn the required amount of money by the end of the year to pay off the debt. And if so, they would face complete ruin. To say something but didn't have time. Shane agreed to his son's adventure. He needed to hear an accurate answer about the likelihood of getting a piece of land. Giving his head to be cut off, my uncle promised 100%. Shane agreed, but on the condition that he would receive the money after 3 months. He was sure that if he gave his granddaughter 3 months, she would give her best. After all, 80% of the company was earned thanks to her father, so she deserved a second chance. Thus, he gave Chloe a chance to correct the situation, and in case of failure, he had a backup plan for his son. The woman enthusiastically promised to complete everything in 3 months, compensate for losses and earn profits. Uncle asked in bewilderment why he should waste time because of Chloe's experiment. Because if they did not manage to pay off the $2 billion debt to that person, the consequences would be terrible. Shane would never allow what happened 5 years ago to happen again, but it was decided that it was fair for both of them. Uncle and Chloe had nothing to say in response. The dissatisfied uncle began to leave the room. Vincent, having heard everything, assumed that his uncle was trying to earn money for himself, completely disregarding the family and the fact that the old man had placed all his hope in Chloe. The circumstances of life in a rich family were terrible. For ordinary people, everything is much simpler, but also less money. Vincent thought he was interested in finding out what happened 5 years ago with the Shaw family. Grandfather understood that after his eldest son was sent to America without the opportunity to return, difficult trials fell on Chloe's shoulders, but he himself was already old. and if she couldn't cope, he would have to use his son's rotten methods. But Chloe no longer had as much confidence as before. She was afraid that she would fail again. The disaster of 5 years ago could happen again. Grandfather reassured her, saying that he had secured the support of a high-ranking official, holding out the foyer to a mysterious friend. He didn't know who it was, but he could always be nearby. On the extended foyer there was an inscription, Golden List. It was held only once every 10 years. Vincent tried to take a closer look at what was so valuable that Chloe was holding in her hands. Grandfather began to explain that the Golden List is an ancient Chinese magic. He had the goal of finding talent among ordinary people, but in fact, none of the nominees was an ordinary person. They needed to make sure that their person got there so that he could help the family get out of the crisis. Although Chloe did not believe in feng shui and magic, she still could not help but trust the list, since its data was always accurate. She really wanted to see the names of the people written on the list. While reading, she saw a familiar name. She was confused as to how this bully could be on the list. Grandfather was inspired when he realized that she knew the person on the list. This could help them a lot. Chloe suggested that the foe was either mistaken, or the name of the namesake was written. Shane tried to understand who she meant. Noting that her father was in 80th place at one time, the girl negatively said that this was not third. In anticipation, Shane guessed first place. On the foyer was written Vincent's name above the first number. Next to it there was a question mark. Grandfather didn't understand whether this meant that the foy had not yet understood Vincent's place. He was better than the first number. He asked his granddaughter if she knew him. She replied that he was the guy who cured his illness. Grandfather confirmed that he noticed his courage and felt an unusual energy around him. Listening closely, Vincent could not understand who they were talking about. Having heard the word hooligan, he could indirectly assume that they were talking about him. Grandfather asked why Chloe told him to leave, because now it would be difficult to find him since the list could not be wrong. The guy could bring huge profits to the family. Sensing something was wrong, Chloe began to look around, trying to convince her grandfather that it couldn't be Vincent. Grandfather asked what was the matter, asking her to continue talking, but then they noticed a silhouette in the window. The woman ran to the window and opened it sharply. Vince couldn't resist and fell. Looking down, she found out who the spy was. Vincent was lying on the ground complaining about his lower back, but overall things could have been worse. Getting up, he pointed at Chloe, calling her a crazy woman who wanted to kill him. In response, she started yelling that he was even crazier if he decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. Vince tried to excuse himself by saying that he was trying to fix the air conditioner. Grandpa Shane smiled. This situation reminded him of his youth. Seeing the guards, Vincent began to run away. Running past the bushes, he told Sheila to quickly reel in the fishing rods. The girl did not want to go out, saying that she had put on a good disguise, and he revealed it. As he walked, Vince shouted that the security would still be combing the area. Calling the guy a pig, she came out from behind the bushes trying to keep up with him. There was a guard standing near the gate. Vincent jumped and roundhouse kicked him in the face. Having opened the doors, they ran away. Chloe was angry. She couldn't wait to catch this bully. Looking at everything that was happening from the balcony, she told her grandfather that Vincent could not possibly be a person who could be on the gold list. She could believe that it could be another person, but not this prankster. Grandfather asked why the girl who ran away with the guy was so familiar to him. Trying to cover up for her sister, Chloe said that he forgot to put on his glasses, also adding that Vince is not going anywhere since he now works for her. Grandfather agreed with her. After some time, Shane, peering at the gold list, called a gangster he knew named White Wolf. He asked him to check the guy's abilities and find out if his granddaughter Sheila was with him. The wolf became interested in the work and asked to use the help of his granddaughter, promising not to go beyond the limits. As for payment, he asked to transfer everything to his account. It didn't matter to Shane whether Vince was really that capable. It would soon be revealed anyway. Having run far away, the couple stood in the alley. Sheila, breathing heavily, told Vincent that she doubted that he was crippled, because despite the fact that he was limping, he managed to run fast and fight well. The guy joked about the fact that her ladyship never bothered herself with physical activity. Sensing something was wrong, Vince fell silent. They were being pursued. Taking a pot nearby, he threw it in the direction of his suspicions. From there, someone screamed in pain. Grabbing the blonde's hand, he ran. Suddenly, a gun appeared in front of his face. The gray-haired man who was holding it ordered the couple to stop. They braked sharply. Trying to persuade the bandit, Vince said that he had no money and he could bring it another time. The girl looked at them in fear. She did not understand what the bandits wanted from them. Another accomplice quietly approached from behind, grabbed Sheila and put a handkerchief with sleeping pills in her face. Vince turned sharply to Sheila, losing sight of the bandit with a pistol. He hit him on the head with the handle. Both young men were lying unconscious. The bandit with a pistol asked his accomplice if he was ashamed to receive a pot from an ordinary guy. The gray-haired man ordered his accomplice to keep an eye on them while he reported to the client about the completed task. Looking at the young people, the accomplice said that it was easy money. Shane's voice was heard from the receiver. He asked how everything went. The White Wolf called Vincent trash. Shane was not very surprised and ordered Sheila to be brought to him without incident. After hanging up the call, the Wolf was surprised at how smoothly the operation went, but could not understand why Mr. Shane allowed such scum to be near his granddaughter for so long. Suddenly, Vincent kicked him with a roundhouse kick, but the Wolf managed to block the blow. The bandit was surprised by this outcome. Teasingly, Vince said that hitting him in the neck was a cocky move. The Wolf noticed his partner lying on the ground. Apparently the guy managed to quietly knock him out, saying that Vincent is a new guy for him. The Wolf suggested that he attack first. Activating the leg recovery technique, the guy rushed to attack. He had already defeated one opponent. Only this old man remained, a difficult target. The guy jumped up while running and tried to kick him in the face. The Wolf blocked this blow too. Vince was surprised by such a masterful parry. Having intercepted him in the air, the old man grabbed his leg and hit him with his palm. Vincent fell in pain, looking at him. The old man said that he had not had enough fun yet. The situation was not in the guy's favor. One more blow from the gray-haired man, and he would finally fall. It was necessary to get out of an unfavorable situation. Vincent began to run away. The Wolf was perplexed by such a move. The guy couldn't leave Sheila here. Lifting her onto his shoulders, he ran further down the street. The White Wolf noticed that Vincent was an interesting opponent. He did not pursue him now. The show was just beginning. While the guy was running, he assessed the fight. This was the strongest opponent of all time. He was lucky that he was able to get away with it. Besides, he didn't know where to leave Sheila. The only thing on his mind was a hotel. Running down the street, he ran out to a girl with red hair who was looking for something. Seeing the guy, the woman took out a gun pointing at him. Vince stopped abruptly, not understanding what was happening at all. Calling Vincent a vile monster and a murderer, the girl ordered Sheila to be put on the ground. After some time, the guy was sitting in handcuffs in the police station. He tried to explain to the woman officer that the girl on his shoulders was his friend, but she didn't care. She didn't stop talking about how he was a terrible animal, and she personally wanted to put him in prison. Vincent countered that she could interview Sheila when she woke up. Thinking that he was lying, she asked where the cripple was last night. He replied that he was with his girlfriend, and that his alibi could be confirmed by as many as 2 people. The officer irritably promised to check his words. Vincent tried to justify himself by saying that he could not even kill a chicken. Then the door opened. A man, a police captain, came into the room. He said that another girl died with the same signs as the previous ones, and the killer left a piece of the puzzle on her. The officer began to guess that she had taken the wrong person. The captain ordered her to stay with the detainee. The girl, exclaiming, asked to go with him. But the man, snarling, asked her not to create problems for him, since because of her they had already missed the killer once. The door slammed. The woman had no choice but to agree. They were left alone in silence. The officer began to cry. The guy, noticing this, tried to console her by saying that she was not to blame. The criminal was too clever. The girl said that it was her fault because while in an ambush she was afraid of a snake, and besides, her younger sister disappeared a month ago. Vincent tensed. The guy suggested that she bring his phone number, then he could help her find the killer. The idea was that things in the game were updated today, and something could appear among the techniques that could help. The girl agreed and went to get the phone, but forbade him to make calls. Having received the phone, Vince began to look around the game store. Many new things appeared. He was interested in one book. The book was about hunting instincts that increase sensory perception and intelligence skills. This was what was needed. It cost 50 money, which was equivalent to 5,000. Of course, the guy didn't have that kind of money. He had to ask the police girl for them. The idea was reckless, but there was no other option. Vince tried to explain that in this way he could track down the killer and return the money to her from the reward received, and since her sister was missing and it was unknown whether she was alive or not, they had to waste time. To the guy's surprise, the policewoman agreed. It became clear why the captain didn't like her, but she threatened that if he deceived her, he would face severe consequences. The woman transferred him 5,000. Only 38 money remained in her account, a number that was consonant with the word slut. This made the guy laugh a lot. The police did not understand why he laughed because he had no money. The guy did not want to explain the reason for his laughter. and asked the woman to wait a couple of minutes so that he could find the desired item. The police agreed. Having found the necessary technique, the guy studied it. The knowledge was immediately driven into his head. Due to the fact that his mind immediately absorbed several skills into his brain, the guy became very dizzy. He learned new skills. Now he could track other people's tracks and hide his own. The policewoman reproached Vincent for spending $5,000 so that he donated to the game and caught the killer. But he had been sitting for half a day without results. The woman decided that he had decided to deceive her. The guy asked her not to rush. Looking at her, Vince wanted to prove his new skills, not understanding what he wanted. The woman thought that he was just teasing her. The guy said that in the policewoman's right breast pocket, there was perfume with the scent of orchid and lavender. He asked if he was right. The police officer was very surprised that he smelled them and even named the exact location. She assumed that his nose was very sensitive. She didn't read the ingredients of the perfume, she just liked the smell. But now looking at the composition, it actually contained lavender. The guy's skills were amazing. But that was not all. The guy noticed that the texture of the policeman's jacket resembles leather. But in fact, it is artificial, and, judging by the wear and tear of the material, it was purchased a year ago. The woman delightedly confirmed Vincent's conclusion. For him, it was just a small test of the new abilities of the senses. Convinced of the perfection of the guy's abilities, the woman was already confident that they would definitely be able to find and catch the killer. Such developed senses were a very rare set among people. Taking the keys, she removed the handcuffs from Vincent. Leading him by the hand, she wanted to take him to the crime scene. The guy asked her not to rush. After all, he was crippled and limped. Riding a motorcycle, the policewoman was in a hurry. Reducing the 15-minute ride to 5 minutes, they had little time. Approaching the crime scene, she turned to the leader of the group, her captain. Addressing a woman named Scarlett, he asked what she was doing here and why she brought with her the suspect she had taken. The couple stood, thinking what to answer him. Scarlett wanted to start first, but the guy got ahead of her. He said that on the way here they explained to him the situation of the previous case. He figured out that the killer was trying to copy the actions from the film Saw, but failed epically. His motive was to successfully escape from the police, teasing them with clues on the spot crimes. After thinking, everyone from the investigation team confirmed that the guy's assumptions make sense. Scarlett again wanted to say something, but the guy asked her to listen further. Vincent tried to assure the group that he could 100% figure out the criminal, and with such a large number of police officers, he would not be able to cause problems for anyone. The captain agreed for the guy to examine the crime scene, but threatened him not to touch anything, and if he couldn't help them today, he would face consequences. Vince asked Scarlett if she would go with him. The policeman hesitantly asked if she could. The guy assumed that she was worried about her younger sister. The woman confirmed his guesses by asking how he knew her thoughts. Without answering her question, the guy immediately said that the victim was not her sister, but it was still an innocent girl, and he would definitely catch the killer and save her sister. Looking at the victim, Vince rhetorically wondered if the criminal had a piece of humanity. He promised himself out loud that he would catch this son of a bitch. The detectives from the group were irritated by the guy's dramatic behavior. One of them had already investigated the scene and found no traces of the criminal. The captain began to have doubts, even though Scarlett was dizzy with excitement. But they couldn't rely on a random person even during emergencies, so he decided to ask the guy if he was able to find something. Vincent began to touch the floor with his hand, feeling it. The captain asked the guy what he was doing. There was a depression in the second half of the room. Based on the fact that the investigation team had soft-soled shoes, Vincent could assume that if their sole prints were removed, only the killer's prints would remain. He had already interviewed the homeowner. He said that only 3 people lived in this part of the house. One of the investigators immediately began to counter-argument Vince's judgments. Even if the guy could identify shoe prints, there would be no benefit from this, because the killer used a fake identity, and there were no cameras in the hotel. Besides, the guy could not prove that the prints belonged to the criminal and not other residents. In the guy's opinion, everything was extremely obvious. Based on the feeling of the trace and the depth of importance and the fact that 2 weeks had passed since the other residents walked here, the guy concluded that the prints belonged to the killer. The captain silently admitted that Vincent understands the essence of the criminal's actions. Still not understanding, the investigator called the guy ignorant for jumping to conclusions based on one piece of evidence. Vince called the investigator an idiot. Vince determined from the heel print that the residents of this section of the hotel were women of short stature and light weight. The killer needed to quickly move the victim's body since the hotel was located on a busy street. The height and weight of the victim was 5'6" and 149 pounds, in which case the women could not have been the criminals. They simply would not have been able to carry the body undetected. Turning to Scarlett, the guy said that she would write down the supposed characteristics of the criminal. According to the guy's height and weight were from 5'8" to 6'1" feet and approximately 195 pounds, and his shoes were of poor quality with heavy soles. There was dried mud on the sole print. The guy assumed that the crime had been committed 3 hours earlier and the criminal was in a dirty place. Since the area around was paved, he came from the suburbs. Trying to devalue Vincent's analysis, the investigator said that he did not give any conclusions. In response, the guy asked him to shut up. Not expecting such impudence, Sledek began to boil with anger. Vincent, as if he did not notice this, asked the others where the victim was staying. The captain replied that the previous 8 victims had stayed in or around the Sunny Garden estate. To Vince, this meant that this was not the first crime scene. Examining the body of the victim, the guy noticed that from the softened joints and broken bones, it was clear that the victim was dismembered and brought to this place in a bag. From the cut wound on his hand, he determined that the criminal used 2 knives to cut in opposite directions, and yet you shouldn't think that the killer is so stupid. The police suggested that the criminal used huge scissors. Vincent confirmed her guess. If he used scissors, then they could guess his profession. The woman suggested gardener. Scarlett again correctly noticed Vincent wanted to do something and asked the group not to mistake him for a pervert. The others did not understand what he meant. Having descended to the victim's body, the guy sniffed the victim's legs. The investigation team was shocked. Everyone called the guy a pervert. Turning to them, Vincent asked not to judge him. He was investigating the case. The girl said irritably that if he didn't find a clue, then she would definitely consider him a pervert. In this case, he asked her to listen carefully. By the smell, Vincent was able to find out the age of the skin, about 35 years old. The criminal wears woolen clothes and seems to have not taken a bath for a long time. He also had dirty hair. There was no doubt left. It was a gardener.
The police officer, not understanding what the guy was getting at, asked him to clearly say what he meant.
Calling the investigation team blind, Vincent said that there was a killer hiding among the gardeners of the Sunny Garden. After some time, they visited the head of the gardeners of the Sunny Garden, who said that there were only 3 gardeners. The garden area was of a high class, and in order to become a gardener, you had to go through a strict selection process. If the investigators wanted photos and data of the workers, then they could find everything in his folder. Pointing her finger at a photograph of one of the middle-aged gardeners, the police officer said that he was the criminal. Vincent asked her not to draw conclusions just by appearance. He had another way to figure out the killer. He picked up a white rag with a blood stain. Vince found it in the trash can and suggested that he might need it. To confirm his hypothesis, he asked Scarlett for her knife, handing it over. She noticed that he even found a rag, but asked not to tell anyone about it since it was prohibited by the rules. Taking the knife, Vincent pricked the tip of his finger with it. The police were perplexed by his actions. Now the guy needed the gardener's head glasses. Scarlett began to guess what Vincent wanted to do. Taking the glasses, he let a drop of blood fall on them from his finger, then wiped them with another rag. Taking 2 rags, he compared them. The drops of blood on both were identical. At first, Vince thought that the criminal wiped his hands with a rag, but now it became clear that they were glasses. Now it was clear that the killer was the gardener with glasses. Vincent asked the boss if this gardener had a day off today, and on what previous days he also took a day off. The boss couldn't believe what Vincent was saying. In his opinion, Joe, the gardener in his eyes, was an honest man and could not be a murderer. Taking out the magazine, the boss excitedly confirmed that Joe's days off coincide with the days of the murders. Another piece of the puzzle was solved. His time off was the answer to the reason for the murders every 3 days. Scarlett was very glad that they had finally found the killer. The guy asked the boss to take them to the killer's gardener's workplace. He agreed. Suddenly, the flashing lights of a police car began to be heard on the street. Apparently, the captain was already here. Vincent was furious. The flashing lights could scare away the killer. He rushed to the gardener's place of work, calling the others with him. They were already running up to the desired building. As they ran up, they noticed huge scissors coming from behind the wall. The guy and the police were scared because the criminal was armed. Gardener Joe was already holding a new victim hostage. She was tied up. Scarlett loudly addressed the criminal by name. He never expected the police to arrive. Pointing a gun at him, the police ordered him to let the girl go. Putting a large knife to the girl's throat, Joe ordered her to put the gun away. Otherwise, he would cut the hostage's throat right now. Scarlett was frightened by this possibility. Asking the criminal not to get excited, she invited him to talk if he did not hurt the girl. To say something but could only hum, the criminal again ordered to lower the gun. Scarlett agreed. Asking the gardener not to be angry, she began to put the weapon on the ground. Putting down her weapon, she was ready to listen to the criminal's conditions. Still holding the woman hostage, the gardener began to yell that all women were terrible, that they would do anything for money. Apparently he was seriously injured by a girl in the past. Scarlett said that he can do anything to her, but if something happens to her sister, he will be finished. Joe said that he killed a lot of people, and another murder does not mean anything to him. Vincent was already standing on the roof behind the killer. Looking at their conversation, he noticed that Scarlett had terrible negotiation skills. Picking up a pebble from the floor, the guy realized that he would have to use force. He threw it into the bushes near the gardener. He naturally got distracted, thinking that someone was hiding in them. Vince jumped on him from the roof. The investigation team ran to the scene of the incident. The captain ordered Scarlett to report the situation. Hugging her sister, she said that everything is fine now. The sister did not stop crying in her arms. Smoking a cigarette, Vince looked at the tied-up gardener like a real hero from a detective movie. From the moment Sheila saw Vincent, the night passed. They left the police station together. The girl could not understand why the gardener killed so many people but left the policewoman's sister alive. Vincent said that she was not the type of woman who could betray her man for money, and these were the ones the killer hated. Killing a girl who had done no wrong was not Joe's style and did not fit with his revenge plan. This proved that this lonely man still had a piece of compassion left. Vince was a little saddened that the man who was called a killer had a good side. It was already getting dark, and the guy offered to call a taxi for Sheila. The girl agreed. Vince walked home. It was already deep night outside. He didn't even manage to get enough sleep during the day. Passing by the corner, someone grabbed his hand and pulled him into the gateway. They put a gun to his throat and ordered him not to move. The man who grabbed him was the White Wolf. He said that the guy should not worry, and he was not his enemy. Vincent rightly noted that he tried to kidnap Sheila and now pointed a gun at him, and, at the same time, claims that he is not an enemy. The wolf handed the guy a phone with a request to answer the incoming call. Vince picked up the phone. On the other end was grandfather Shane. He asked if the guy recognized him. Asking what he was up to, Vincent reminded him that he had already saved his life once. Shane said that he wanted to show the guy the way. He said that the wolf had information about the car accident of Vincent's parents and asked if he wanted to find out who set it up. The wolf hid the gun and began to take something out of his jacket. The guy was confused. All this time he thought something was an accident. The White Wolf handed him an envelope. It contained secret information about the police. It contained ambiguities that the police hid. The wolf said that the ambiguity was discovered 5 years ago by a police trainee named Scarlett. But the detail was not considered important. But most likely people from above wanted to hide something. The note on the envelope stated that a gold emblem of the Lee family was found at the scene of the incident, presumably torn from a piece of clothing. Vincent didn't understand why there was no evidence in the envelope. The wolf decided to warn the guy and not look for evidence. Someone wanted this document to drown for days at sea, so it's not surprising that they removed the evidence provided by Scarlett. The guy asked the wolf to remove the document, but he wanted to take the note left by Scarlett since she might be in trouble if someone found out about it. The wolf agreed. Vincent immediately moved on to questions. He began asking the wolf what kind of family the Lees were, how much power they had, how well their home was protected, and whether he would have a chance to destroy them. Found out about this incident when he was looking for information about Vincent. The guy still remembered the day his parents died. Then they returned from work to talk to him, but the happiness of their family was destroyed then, 5 years ago. And it was all the Lee family's fault. The guy really wanted to kill them. The wolf asked the guy to continue listening to Shane. Shane began by saying that he did not believe that the guy could be the son of Winston Evans. But since it happened so, he should have known that his family was one of the 9 sects that did not know about the pseudonym of his father 10 years ago. The 9 sects of the Noble King. Now Shane wants to set Vincent on the right path as thanks for protecting Sheila and helping Chloe. Vince knew nothing about the 9 sects of the Noble King. He wondered what he should do now. The old man's idea was for him to learn from the White Wolf. Vince asked in bewilderment if he really wanted him to follow the path of the criminal world. The old man replied that the Shaw family could not help him much, and even needed help. But the path he offered him did not require money and strength. It was the fastest and most effective. But at the same time, it could lead the guy into darkness. He can only pass it if he sticks to the original goal. Shane asked the guy to think carefully about this path. Looking at the shining moon, Vincent remembered his parents. It seemed to him that if they looked at him now, they would consider him useless, because being the son of such famous people, he lived worse than a dog. But now, he knew who deliberately killed them. From today, his goal was to take revenge on his parents. Taking the phone, Vince agreed to follow the path. But if he couldn't, he would renege on the words of his promise. Shane was pleased with the guy's answer and asked what his promise was. God wants to kill him, but he will not die. God wants to humiliate him, but he will build his own kingdom to show him who he really is. Being a man, he will stand out. People, these were the words of the guy's promise. Grandfather was worth Vincent's word. Now he must follow the White Wolf. He will take him to a special person. But the guy must rely only on himself in the question of who he wants to become. Also, his position in the company will be retained. Vince responded positively, and that was the end of their conversation. Handing the phone to the wolf, the guy said that he was a man, and if that was the case, he had nothing to be afraid of. He was already tired enough of the life he lived. The wolf asked the guy if he knew about the Haynes cooperation. The guy replied that he only knew that this was the largest group of 9 sects in G province. Telling Vince to follow him, the wolf began to talk about cooperation. In Main City, there is a rule that every year the elders hold a rally to support the people. But in reality, the leaders of the main family are under the control of the Lane Group. The Lane Group itself is divided into 2 parts, the headquarters and local branches in various places. The authorized representatives at the headquarters are the board of directors. There are only 9 local branches. They make unexpectedly large profits by controlling the territory. For example, nightclubs and bars. Even though they are a group of companies, what they do is unacceptable. The wolf believes that the headquarters is far from the guy, so he decided that he should start from the starting line. So he led him to the leader of the group, Singh. They approached the building of the group's leader, a man named Chung. Walking inside, they went down the stairs to the basement. Seeing the wolf, Chung called him by his name Gary and said that he made him worry. The reason was that Gary had not visited him for several months, and he should have at least shared the news. Now he needed to settle something. Chung said that he is not from the part of the board of directors that is rich and arrogant. Checking the goods is not an easy job, but people like them are trying to appropriate it for themselves. At this rate, the board will drive him crazy. The wolf replied that problems of this kind had never concerned him, and Cheng should have dealt with it himself. The gangster noticed that all this was not just like that. 2 people were sitting on their knees in front of the bandit, and he asked Gary if he could identify the thief from the suspects. The wolf did not have such a skill, but he offered to help Vincent, calling him brother. He introduced himself, saying that he had already met Chung. He said that if the guy is already at the place of work, then he becomes a member of their family. If the guy correctly names the thief, then he will reward him well. Smiling, Vince asked how big the reward was waiting for him. Clapping for Vincent, Chung praised him for his determination and adoration of money. Since Vincent, Gary's younger brother, will receive the management of the Angel Karaoke Club as a reward. This more than suited the guy. He agreed. Approaching the suspects, he asked their names. Chang answered instead. Their names were Juan and Fletcher. The gangster assumed that the second was not guilty since he had followed him for 5 years, but Juan was only 3. Therefore, he is a thief. Not knowing what product the thief could steal, the guy asked Chung to bring it, but he had already thrown it away and he didn't have any samples. In his opinion, Vince didn't need to know what those things were. Realized to himself that Chung did not trust him yet. In order to truly become part of the family and earn the trust of the boss, he needed to decide this himself. The guy tried to explain himself, saying that it would be easier for him to come to a conclusion. But if there is nothing, then this will not greatly affect the outcome. Descending towards the suspects, Vince sniffed them. Just after sniffing Juan a little, the guy became dizzy. His body reeked of sleeping pills. It turns out that he used it. But on Fletcher's nails, the smell of the sleeping pill was even stronger. Vince asked Chung if they were allowed to transport the goods, or they were not allowed to touch it. Chung did not want to answer, citing the fact that the guy asks a lot of questions. Still, deciding to answer, he said that they were only supposed to look after the cargo and could not touch it without permission. Vince immediately pointed at Fletcher, saying that he was a thief. Chung was perplexed that the guy revealed the truth so quickly and asked for evidence. Sleeping pills from Juan's body, but not from Fletcher's body. Interrupting him, Juan could not understand why Vincent was now saying that he was the criminal. Continuing, Vince explained that Fletcher's nails smelled of sleeping pills and that they were forbidden to touch the contraband. Grabbing Fletcher by the collar, Chung shoutingly asked him if he really did it. He frightenedly tried to explain that he could not appropriate the goods for himself. He was kidnapped by another bandit named Hank. He threatened him that he would kill the whole family if he did not give him the goods. Having released him, Chung did not understand whether he really meant Hank from the department, in which case he asked why the subordinate did not tell him about this. Fletcher again said that he had threatened to kill his family. Looking back at the guard, Chung ordered him to bring someone to their room. Chung wanted to scare him. I asked him if he really thought that if he hid the truth, he could save the life of his family. Security brought Fletcher's wife and daughter tied up at gunpoint. The bandit begged the master not to do anything with her, asking to punish him instead of him. Video of the whole situation. Vincent wanted to intervene and tried to tell Chung that the thief's family had nothing to do with it. He answered the guy that since he was new and didn't know the rules, this time he wouldn't do anything to him. But if he said even one more word, he would be in trouble. The gangster said that the root of the problem must be torn out of the ground to prevent future disasters. The boss took a gun out of his jacket. Suddenly he shot straight at Juan's head. He didn't even have time to understand anything. Everyone was shocked by this move by the group leader. Juan began to fall. Vince was furious, shouting at Chung. He didn't understand why he had to kill an innocent person. He calmly replied that Vincent was new, and he didn't need to explain the reasons why he wanted to get rid of someone. Still, for Gary's sake, he decided to explain one thing to Vince. The fact is that Juan failed in his duties. Without realizing it, he allowed Fletcher to give the goods to Hank. Chung did not need such a useless subordinate. Now the boss pointed his gun at Fletcher's family, who begged him not to shoot. The related family was terrified. Chung aimed at Fletcher's daughter. Vincent could not allow the child to be killed. He intercepted the gun and pointed it at the floor. The wolf, turning to Vincent, asked what he was doing. The guy was still holding Chung's gun pointed down. He said that if he didn't let go, he would be killed next. Vincent, trying to save his family, said that Chung would not be able to return the goods if Hank took possession of them, in which case he asked what was more valuable to him, the goods or Fletcher and his family. Security and Gary did not understand what he wanted to say. The wolf directly asked what the guy meant. Vincent noticed that everyone saw his abilities. He asked him for a month to return the goods. If he fails, then Chung will have the right to kill him, Fletcher and his family. Chung agreed with satisfaction. He will let the family and Fletcher go, and from now on Vincent will become a member of the Sing group and also the owner of the karaoke. But Chung still wanted Fletcher to suffer at least some punishment and point the gun at his family again. Vince suddenly grabbed the knife from him. Blood gushed. Wolf and Chung did not expect such actions from the guy. Fletcher looked at his hand in fear. Vince cut off his right thumb with one blow. The wolf silently noted that this was a good way out of the situation. Shouting at Fletcher, Vince said that even though he asked Chung to spare him, he could not forgive him for his mistake, so he had to be punished. Losing his finger should make it clear to him that he now must work at 120%. Otherwise, Vincent will personally shoot his... Fletcher responded through pain that from this day on he would completely devote himself to the Sing group. Now Vince asks Chung if it's okay that he himself punished Fletcher. Chung replied that he did the right thing and the thief will never forget this. Taking Fletcher by the arms, Vincent lifted him up. He thanked him, because by essentially cutting off his finger, Vincent saved his family. Having said that a month is enough time, Vincent asked to take Fletcher with him. He also asked if he could stop by at the karaoke. Chung answered positively. The three began to leave the building. The boss unpleasantly noticed that the guy's speed and maneuverability are high, and if he wanted, he could kill him. Juan's corpse still lay in the middle of the room. Sitting on a chair, the boss thought about the plans of Vincent and Gary. Cheng turned to one of the guards. He asked him to make inquiries about Vincent and send people to karaoke to cause problems for the guy. All this in order to check how good he is, and he asked to send people not involved in the group. Fletcher bandaged his hand. He again thanked Vincent for his help in saving his family. Despite the fact that he was older, Vince was much braver and smarter than him, so he told him that his life was now in the hands of the guy, if he didn't mind, of course. Having lit a cigarette, the guy looked into his reflection in the mirror. In the future, he needed true friends, and Fletcher was a good man who took care of his family. Vince had a good feeling about him. Vincent agreed to Fletcher's proposal. If he doesn't mind that he has little experience, he also asked to call himself simply Vince. Fletcher asked the guy not to belittle his abilities. For him, he seemed to be a very devoted person who valued his comrades. For him, the guy was not like Chung. Vince noticed that he didn't seem to have lived 35 years in vain. Fletch asked what ideas Vince had, and if they didn't work, could he escape? The guy replied that he wouldn't have to run away because he had come up with something. Fletch realized that he wanted to cooperate with the Hong group. They did not see eye to eye with Chung, and if this incident was revealed, a conflict would arise. But if their leader Hank finds out about everything, he will kill Fletcher's wife and daughter. Vince calmed him down by saying that Juan would no longer be able to spill the beans. Fletch said that his hands were already covered in blood, so there was nothing to be sad about. Now Vince needed to go to karaoke. He needed to earn as much money as possible. Only then he could talk to Hank. Fletch said that Angel Karaoke has gone bankrupt and has become a place where people hang around, which is why it's dangerous. Chung knew about this, and sooner or later he will have to close it, so he does not want to manage it. Which is why he transferred the building to the management of Vincent. The guy didn't care about the presence or absence of potential. The main thing was that it was a place for opportunity. He just needed to come up with a plan to make money from it. Fletcher offered to go there right away. But Vince didn't want to because he needed to rest. He said that if Hank's people come, Fletch can refer to Juan. He wanted to go to karaoke the other day. In any case, Ching will try to cause problems for him. It was already late at night. Vince decided to go to Sheila's warehouse. When he entered, he was surprised at the presence of people there. Sheila and Chloe were in the room. The latter asked why she couldn't be in the building she owns. Vince jokingly asked if she was interested in tea leaves. Sheila giggled. Warning. He said not to try anything according to his recipe. But the woman had already raised a mug of chach to her lips. The guy said this work was carefully done by him and her sister, playfully hinting at their close contact. Chloe choked in embarrassment. Sheila also got embarrassed, calling the guy a bastard. Pointing to a check with a round sum, she dramatically said that it would go in the trash. Vincent understood what she was getting at. With lightning speed, he snatched it from under Chloe's hands, saying that he would sell her a recipe for tea. The guy looked at the envelope contentedly. Chloe noticed that marketing the tea would be a little difficult, but the product itself is good. Sheila, not understanding what the problem was, suggested making a regular advertisement. Chloe explained that she had a conflict with one family, namely with Kyle, who ordered all stores in the city not to enter into contracts with her. This meant that the best advertising methods were lost. Sheila clarified that it was really the guy who pursued Chloe with a contract, but in the end she kicked him out. Her sister confirmed her guesses. Vincent was overcome with anger and promised to deal with this shameless person. The girls looked at him in bewilderment. Sheila didn't think that he would be so worried about her sister. Vince, trying not to show his empathy, said that no one would worry about Chloe. She replied that no one would want such a guy to worry about their problems. Sheila decided to ask what Vincent would do if Kyle forced her to marry her. The guy said that this would not have happened as he would never be interested in the girl. Sheila flushed angrily at Vince's joke. She thought that the guy wanted to say that she was not attractive. Trying to calm her down, Vince said that he would break 3 of Kyle's legs for such behavior. Sheila calmed down but said that something was wrong. The guy wanted to answer, but Chloe interrupted him, saying that he looked like a man who was tired of life. Seeing that she was angry, the guy said that he was joking about 3 legs and actually meant 2. When both calmed down, the guy suggested that Chloe find out what Kyle was up to, and then he would deal with him. Chloe said that he only knows that he often sits at the Angel Karaoke Club. Vincent involuntarily grinned at such a funny coincidence. Leaving the room, he told the girl to expect good news. Finally, the elder sister said that the guy can act but be careful. This time, the Shaw family will cover him. Looking back, he said that she can leave her fears. This time, he does not need the support of her family. Sitting in a cafe, Vince wanted to fill his stomach with food before business. And he also needed to look at new things in the store. He came across a technique for jumping into a cloud. The ability enhanced jumping abilities. Was restored in 10 seconds, although 6,000 was a bit expensive. The guy did not know when he would be able to use such a technique again. He had a feeling that he would soon need to use this technique. Taking the phone, he called Fletcher, telling him to arrive at the karaoke in an hour. Glad that the guy began to make his move, he wanted to introduce his friend who wants to meet him. Vincent agreed but said that he didn't want to meet someone useless. He asked him not to worry, saying that his friend was strong. They met already near the club. Fletcher apologized for being late, but Vince said that he had just arrived. The big guy's name was Chin. They were late because he needed to deal with someone. Looking at Incenta, Chin called him a weakling. Fletch was dissatisfied with such words and said that he himself wanted to meet him. The big man replied that he just trusted his words, but now he sees a guy without a single muscle. Vince reassured Fletcher, if the big guy has good abilities, then it's not surprising that he's self-confident. The guy just needs to curb him. Fletch asked to be gentle with him. Chin thought he was joking. The big guy took a swing at Vince. He grabbed his fist without any problems. Chin couldn't believe what was happening. The thin guy intercepted his blow so easily. Vince twisted his arm in one action. Chin grabbed her in pain. Looking at everything, Fletcher only became more convinced of Vincent's power. Chin could have fought with 15 bandits, but he stopped him so easily. Vince noticed that the big guy had a strong blow. His arm hurt. Chin said that usually those who block his blow like that break their wrist. From that moment on, the big man recognized Vincent as his boss. Fletcher vouched for him, saying that Chin did not waste words. But Vince stopped him, saying that they were just friends and they would only make money together. Pointing to the club, he said that now they will look after this place. Inside, a man held a woman's hand, saying that she was doing wrong by refusing to be his master's mistress, even though she spilled alcohol on him. The girl tried to refer to the fact that she was a student, and she was very sorry. The man swung at her, but his hand was intercepted. It was Chin. He said that the girl was coming under the wing of his boss. The man said that Chang was never interested in such things. Pointing at Vince, he said that this is his new boss. The man asked about Chin's boss because he had never seen him. Vince asked who told him to hit on the girl. He replied that it was Kyle. Vincent was just looking for him, and now he had a reason to deal with him. A group of people began to descend towards them from the stairs of the second floor. These were the local bosses. Standing on it was Kyle, a guy with red hair, and also a blonde named Brad. He said that if they came to have fun, then he doesn't mind. But if their goal is a showdown, then his people won't just sit there. Security with bats began to approach the guys. Kyle ordered them to concentrate on Chin. In his opinion, the rest did not matter. Vincent funnily noted that they looked down on him. He ordered Chin to close the door so that no one could escape, but Fletcher had to protect the girl. Fletcher encouraged the guy by telling him not to worry. Chin had already closed the door. Brad said that he was notified that the guy should replace him, but since he is no match for him, he can only join them. Vince said that now he will show them their place. The blonde couldn't understand why Big Chin was guarding the door. He recognized him and treated him with respect. But why would he get involved with a cripple? Chin said that he would regret his words. Rubbing his hands, Brad ordered the guards to start a fight. The guards rushed at Vincent, and he approached the golden monument nearby. With one hand, he broke out a large golden halberd from him. The guards hesitated for a second, surprised by the strength of the cripple. Even Chin was stunned. The halberd weighed at least 200 kilograms. Vince apologized to the statue and promised to make it rich after he sorted it out. The guards were scared. They didn't want to die. Like a butterfly, Vincent rushed at them with a halberd. Running up to the bosses, he swung at the blonde. Having received a blow to his hand, he began to scream in pain. Standing among the bandits, he asked if there was anyone else who was ready to oppose him. Vincent cut off the blonde's right hand. Looking at everyone, he once again asked if anyone dared to oppose him. Brad, through pain, begged for mercy, saying that he did not recognize the great man. Vince told him to get out and think twice before saying anything unnecessary to Boss Chung. The guy lit a cigarette. Fletcher asked what they should do with the others. Knowing what problems Kyle brought to Chloe, he ordered to kill him. The red-haired man was stunned, afraid. He tried to hide behind his family and the fact that Vince would have problems. The girl he took under his wing came up to him, asking him not to punish Kyle. He begged for mercy, saying that he did not know that this girl was his. The girl was embarrassed by his words. Chin and Fletch laughed a little. The girl, still trying to convince Vince, said that he should be released, otherwise everything will get out of control. Vincent said that if she asks him, he agrees, but even if he survives, he will have to pay. Turning to Chin, he ordered to take Kyle to the room and beat the crap out of him so that he would not forget today. While Chin was dragging Kyle, he tried to call the guards, but they no longer obeyed him. The girl thanked Vincent. Taking the girl by the shoulders, he said that Kyle called her his girlfriend, and in this case, ordinary thanks would not be enough. The girl was very embarrassed. But Vince was just joking. When he let her go, he said that she just needs to work well here. Going to the second floor, he asked Fletcher to help the girl get settled, and with Chin, they had to go meet the karaoke boss. Calling the girl his daughter-in-law, Fletch led her further to the rooms. Rising, Vince turned to the girl again. She also turned around. Vincent still didn't know her name, and first introduced himself by saying his. The girl introduced herself as Charlotte. Having said that she has a very beautiful name, the guy continued to climb the steps. Entering the office, they saw a man sitting on his knees. A knife was put to his throat. With one jerk, Vince ran up and pushed the killer, stunning him. The man was stunned by the guy's speed. The guy asked if he was the karaoke boss. A blonde man introduced himself as Bane, an investor and owner of a karaoke. The former owner tried to remove him and even carried out illegal transactions at the karaoke. Vince reassured him by saying that as long as he was here, this would not happen again, and asked Bane to focus on managing the karaoke. The owner felt a stone fall from his soul when he heard the guy's words. He handed over 120,000 commission to Vincent as payment. Vince decided to keep this money for now, assuring that he would only take his share. When leaving, he said that he was leaving Bane to manage this place, and if someone bothered him, he could just say his name. Vince went to the room where the girl was. She needed money. The girl needed 40,000, and immediately said that she was unable to return it to him. Fletch said that he could rent a room for them, hinting at how the girl could repay Vince. After these words, a pillow flew at him. Vince said he's not the type of person to take advantage of damsels in distress. He handed the money to Charlotte, saying that she should take good care of her parents. In bewilderment, she asked how he knew why she needed money. Vincent replied that he just guessed. The girl bowed deeply in gratitude. When leaving, she said that she would never forget what he did for her. And when her mother recovered, she would definitely return to thank him. Chin was shocked. He said that Vince's ability to pick up girls is beyond his understanding. Vince replied that Chin's ability to kiss ass is beyond his understanding. In any case, they had one more thing to do, after which they should visit Chung. Chin was wondering what Vince wanted to do. Beaten Kyle begged for forgiveness. Vincent, sitting on the sofa, was cutting a watermelon. He said that if he promises him one thing, then no one will bother Kyle anymore. Kyle agreed to anything. Vince ordered Kyle to cancel the order that prevented the Shen family from selling products. Kyle naturally agreed, asking him not to worry about it anymore. Vince pulled out photographs. They were secretly taken by a photographer. In them, Kyle was in shameful situations, and Vince could use them if something happened. Vince threw photos at Kyle's feet. He wasn't afraid that Kyle might do something to him, but his family was quite important, and if these photos get into the media, his life will become much more complicated. Kyle again began to beg the guy not to rat him out. Vincent reassured him that they could solve this with money. He said that 400,000 is a small amount for such a rich gentleman as Kyle. He was clearly pleased that everything could be solved in a way convenient for him. After some time, the trio climbed the stairs to Chung. Fletcher did not understand something and decided to ask Vincent. He didn't understand why he didn't ask for more money. According to Vince, 400,000 served as a punishment for Kyle. If he had gone too far, he would have simply run away, but this way he leaves him freedom of action. The guys were impressed by Vince's thoughtfulness. Meeting them, Chung asked them to wait. He needed to deal with something. There were also 3 guys standing in front of him. Chung asked them to wait. Quietly turning to Fletcher, Vincent asked if he knew them. Flat began to talk about the Trinity. Bald was an auto mechanic, the owner of 6 workshops, and he had 100 people under his command. The man with the mohawk was the owner of the night market. He didn't have many people, but all his subordinates were loyal to him. The last one was a red-haired man, the owner of a sports store. His nickname was Red Dog because he gets the job done right. All 3 brought money from their proceeds to Cheng. Now he turned to Vincent, asking about his income. The guy told Chin to put money in. The bald mechanic asked Chin if he was really with Vincent now. The big guy answered positively. When putting money in, Chin said that they only give 120,000 since they just started doing business. Chung looked displeasedly at the placed packs. Vincent decided to immediately ask what was wrong with the money. And did the boss really think that he had taken some amount for himself? Cheng replied that everything is in order, and there is as much money as needed. He asked the guy if he knew about the complicated situation in Chengxi, because of which there were a lot of spies. But since now he trusted Vince, from today Vincent became one of the comrades of the Chengxi branch. Red-haired objected, saying that they all started with the signing of the contract. Besides, they should have been wary of spies, and they shouldn't have trusted a guy just because he showed little success. Also, the Red Dog was able to dig up something on the guy. He found out that he was from the Evans family, in the past one of the most powerful. The red-haired man handed the phone with information to Chung. After lighting a cigarette, Vincent said that he should not be suspected because his family had long since fallen to the bottom. And when his parents died, he broke off all relations with relatives. Chung agreed, saying that the past is not important now. But because of the disagreement, he couldn't just let Vince go. Now he will need to make an argument for his benefit. Vince asked to give him 3 days. The bald mechanic and the man with the mohawk supported him, saying that he could turn to them for help. The red-haired man remained silent. The trio left the room. Chung's guard asked if Vincent could really get the territory of the old city if he proved his loyalty. Chung responded positively, saying that everyone had seen what he was capable of. The Red Dog was outraged. Initially, the boss promised to give the territory of the old city to the first one who would pay $5 million, but he had already given 4.5. When leaving, Chung said that the Red Dog is his best subordinate, but he will have to give the territory to the guy because he owes Gary for a long time. The red-haired man was very angry. The guard told Chung that he acted very smartly when he decided to provoke the red dog, and now he will interfere with Vincent. This way a balance will be built between them. After lighting a cigarette, Chung said that he would like to take the guy for himself, if not for the orders of the Lee family. But all because at one time Vince's father took the wrong side. And now the Lee family has found Vincent too.